Chapter 516. I have to start from history. In this quiet midnight, in a temporary tent, Yang Xiuqing learned from the soldiers about the magnificent scenes that had happened in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom since the beginning of the Jintian uprising. Yang Xiuqing had mixed feelings when he heard about the incident in Tianjin. In history, Yang Xiuqing finally met his end because of his growing ambition. After listening to the soldier's story, Yang Xiuqing's heart was in turmoil. All the previous mysteries had been explained. At this moment, Yang Xiuqing was extremely confused and even a little desperate. Would Hong Xiuquan, the Heavenly King, forgive him if he led his troops back to Tianjin City? His chances were slim. The soldier looked at Yang Xiuqing with an inexplicable expression. This soldier was a high-level secret agent from the Military Intelligence Department who had been lurking around Yang Xiuqing. His mission was to drive a wedge between Hong Xiuquan and Yang Xiuqing at the critical moment and win Yang Xiuqing over. I have a plan that can help you break out of your cocoon and become a butterfly. Are you willing to follow me? Yang Xiuqing looked at the soldier cautiously and asked, "You have spent so much effort to get close to me. I'm afraid you have ulterior motives, right? What? You still can't tell me who your master is. With your intelligence, I'm afraid you have already guessed it." The soldier smiled and seemed to have a card up his sleeve. Yang Xiuqing was shocked and said, "Could it be Shan? That's right. I didn't expect that. My master has admired you for a long time. If you succeed in the future, you will be put in an important position." The soldier took out a secret letter and handed it to Yang Xiuqing. This secret letter was specially sent by Ouyang Shuo through the Military Intelligence Department. Of course, this secret letter had actually been written 2 months ago. The contents of the letter were nothing more than some promises. Not only this secret agent, but the other secret agents also had similar secret letters. When the time was right, they could use this secret letter to instigate the enemy to rebel. After reading it, Yang Xiuqing was shocked. To Yang Xiuqing, Ouyang Shuo promised the position of a county governor. Whether in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom or in Shanghai City, a county governor was an extremely important official. Such a promise could not be said to be insincere. Although there are only a few words in the letter, Yang Xiuqing could feel that the Marquis of Lian Province was broad-minded and broad-minded. Compared to Hong Xiuquan, who had failed many times, the two of them could not be mentioned in the same breath. It was truly a blessing to be able to serve under such a ruler. It had to be said that the characteristics of Ouyang Shuo's personal title, Hero Lord, was displayed to its fullest at this moment. This kind of influence was imperceptible to historical figures. If it was someone else, Yang Xiuqing would not be so easily convinced. What Yang Xiuqing didn't expect was that Marquis Lianzhou's plan was so far-reaching. The other party had long laid down so many foreshadowing in the Kingdom of Heaven. From this, it could be seen that the interior of Heavenly State had definitely been infiltrated by the other party. What a joke! Hong Xiuquan still thought that his Kingdom of Heaven was impregnable. Thinking of this, the future of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom became increasingly bleak. As the saying goes, a fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. Since Hong Xiuquan could no longer trust him, Yang Xiuqing could only find a new master. Forget it, forget it! In the end, Yang Xiuqing let out a long sigh, put the secret letter into his bosom, and said lightly, "From today on, you will be transferred here to be my personal guard." When people were in the most desperate situation, they couldn't refuse the life-saving straw extended by others. Naturally, Yang Xiuqing was no exception. General is wise. The secret agent was overjoyed and quietly left. As for the specific arrangement, naturally, it would be discussed later. After all, in the dead of night, it was easy to cause unnecessary trouble if the two talked for too long. The soldier was not worried that Yang Xiuqing would go to report him. The smarter a person was, the more he knew how to weigh the pros and cons. For Yang Xiuqing, going forward was an abyss, but taking a step back was a vast sea in the sky. It was too easy to choose. Yang Xiuqing was not so foolishly loyal to the Kingdom of Heaven. Outside the tent, the night was getting darker and darker, like thick ink, and one couldn't see his fingers in front of him. After tonight, The fate of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom would become darker and darker, just like the night. October 28th, Milan Fortress. When the sun rose again, it was already a busy scene outside Milan Fortress. When the battle last night ended, it was already nighttime, and there was no time to clean up the battlefield. When the battlefield reappeared under the sunlight, people couldn't help but be moved. On the battlefield that stretched for more than 10 miles, corpses were everywhere, and blood flowed like rivers. After a night of flowing, the gurgling blood had completely seeped into the soil. According to preliminary estimates, just last night, at least 50,000 soldiers were completely buried on the battlefield. There were still many soldiers in the Taiping army who sighed with sorrow. Bai Qi and Han Exin, the two immortal generals, stood side by side on the city wall, watching the battlefield outside the city, speechless for a while. The two armies had successfully met and jointly wiped out the southern army of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. As for what to do next, the two were still waiting for the order from the military administration, or the Marquis. Last night's battle report had been sent to Chiyu City overnight. According to the calculation, there should be news by this morning at the latest. According to the preliminary statistics after the battle, more than 120,000 soldiers of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom were captured in this battle, and countless supplies, more than 20,000 war horses for cannons, and some other supplies were seized. In addition, of the 4 generals of the Southern Army, 1 died in battle, and the other 2 were captured. This battle could be said to be a complete victory for Shanghai City. Of course, in the last bloody battle, the 2 armies also paid a price. A total of more than 10,000 soldiers were completely buried on the ground outside the fortress. Han Xin turned his head and inadvertently glanced at Bai Qi. Han Xin admired this god of slaughter, but he was also not convinced. He really wanted to wrestle with Bai Qi. Han Xin was not willing to give up the title of the #1 immortal general of Shanghai City. What about Bai Qi? No matter when and where, Bai Qi always had a serious look on his face, making it impossible to see through his emotions. In this battle, both of them had made great contributions. In contrast, Han Xion's long-distance raid and decisive attack were the key to this great victory. Therefore, in this battle, Han Xion could be said to have won by a small margin. How could the name of the immortal soldier be ordinary? General, a letter from the Marquis. At this moment, the intelligence officer of the Military Intelligence Department stationed in Mulan Fortress hurried over. Both of them turned around at the same time, and their eyes lit up. The Marquis's reply was so fast that it was indeed somewhat unexpected. As the commander of Mulan Fortress, Bai Qi received the letter first, quickly read it, and then handed it to Han Xion. Han Xion was a little silent after reading it. The Marquis's instructions in the letter made both of them a little puzzled. After skipping the congratulatory words, the letter mainly explained the arrangements for the 2 armies. The Marquis has decreed that after the 2 armies meet at Mulan Fortress, they will rest on the spot for a few days. When the 1st Division of the Dragonxiang Legion, led by Jiang Kai, arrives at Mulan Fortress, they will then attack. The surrendered soldiers of the Taiping Army will be handed over to the City Guard Division. The 2 armies set off from Mulan Fortress and split into 2 routes, one east and one west, slowly advancing toward Tianjin City. Along the way, they will attack cities and pull out fortresses and do not leave any survivors. The administrative office will send officials to cooperate with the army along the way to take over the captured cities. As for the capture of Tianjin City, it can be delayed, not rushed. It was this last sentence that made Bai Qi and Han Xion somewhat puzzled. Logically speaking, the southern army of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had already been destroyed, and the Western Punitive Expedition Army was far away in Kunming Prefecture, out of their reach. This was the best time to advance quickly and capture Tianjin City in one fell swoop. Unexpectedly, the Marquis did not want to capture Tianjin City so early. The reason was really puzzling. However, the Marquis's orders could not be disobeyed, so the 2 of them could only sigh helplessly. After a brief discussion, it was finally decided that Bai Qi would lead the Dragonxiang Legion from the east and advance all the way north, while Han Xian would lead the Leopard Tau Legion from the west and also advance all the way north. The two armies agreed to meet again outside Tianjin City. According to the battle report sent by Jiang Kai, the 1st Division of the Dragonxiang Legion would walk out of the 100,000 mountains in a few days. Therefore, the specific date of departure was set at November 4th, which was 5 days later. Why did Ouyang Shuo make such a decision? Let's go back to last night, when Ouyang Shuo received the battle report. Knowing that the two armies had met in advance and had successfully destroyed the southern army of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Ouyang Shuo was naturally happy. After this battle, the Southwest war situation was basically irreversible. As for why they did not directly attack Tianjin City, it had to go back to the matter of the cannons. In history, Hong Xiuquan had defended Tianjin City to the death and was unwilling to retreat, resulting in his eventual defeat. Having been reborn, Ouyang Shuo did not believe that Hong Xiuquan would still be so stubborn. Therefore, once the army advanced, Hong Xiuquan was very likely to abandon the city and flee. In this way, the cannon's technical manual would naturally disappear along with it. This was something that Ouyang Shuo could not accept no matter what. Therefore, the only way was to stabilize Hong Xiuquan. The two armies reorganized themselves and slowly advanced towards Tianjin City, giving Hong Xiuquan hope. In this way, Hong Xiuquan could order Shidakai and the other generals to lead the Western Expedition Army back to defend Tianjin City. Naturally, there was no way to talk about abandoning the city. In this way, it could be considered as helping Lingxi City out of its predicament. In addition, there was another factor, Yang Xiuqing. Although Ouyang Shuo had already planted chess pieces around Yang Xiuqing. To be effective, he had to at least wait until Yang Xiuqing arrived at Tianjin City. Therefore, no matter what, the two armies could not advance lightly. After all, Bai Qi and Han Xian were only generals and did not know much about these secret plans. Therefore, they were puzzled by Ouyang Shuo's military order. For the sake of the cannons, Ouyang Shuo had put in a lot of effort. He could only hope that the two intelligence agencies would not disappoint him. To be continued. Chapter 517, October 30th, Qiyu City. After a long journey of several days, Fan Zhongyan and his party finally arrived at Qiyu City under the protection of the army. When Ouyang Shuo received the news, he personally welcomed them at the city gates. Master Fan was the only one who could enjoy such an honor. There were more than 300 officials accompanying Fan Zhongyan. It could be said to be a large lineup. Among them were officials drawn from the various departments of the Southern Border Protectorate, as well as officials recommended by various prefectures and counties. In addition, there were more than 50 students who had graduated early from the Southwest University China Hall. The biggest characteristic of these 300 people was their youth. According to the statistics of the administrative office, the average age of the officials in Shanghai City was less than 30. The average age of the officials accompanying Fan Zhongyan was even lower, only 27. To lead such a young team and govern a county, Duke Fan had a long way to go. At noon, Ouyang Shuo hosted a banquet in the city lord's residence to entertain Fan Zhongyan and his party. The accompanying officials were grateful to see the marquis placing so much importance on them. How could they not do their best to assist Fan Zhongyan in governing Wuzhou County? In the afternoon, Ouyang Shuo met with Fan Zhongyan alone in his study. After staying in Qiyu City for a week, Ouyang Shuo naturally did not idle around. He already had a general understanding of the situation in Wuzhou County. Thus, before Fan Zhongyan officially took office, Ouyang Shuo had to personally inform him. Because Wuzhou County was vast and sparsely populated, Ouyang Shuo only established 4 prefectures in Wuzhou County. The specific personnel arrangements were decided by Fan Zhongyan and the newly appointed administrative office Xiao He. With the expansion of the territory, Ouyang Shuo had gradually handed over the appointment of prefectures to the administrative office. Unless there was some special talent that needed Ouyang Shuo's personal placement, he would not interfere with the appointment and removal of personnel in the administrative office. There was no doubt that the administrative office of Wuzhou County was set up in Qiyu City. Fan Zhongyin suggested that in order to eliminate Chiyou's influence in the county, they could change the name of Chiyou City. Ouyang Shuo thought for a moment, then tactfully declined the suggestion. Since Chiyou had been buried in the Demon King's slope, all grievances had vanished like smoke. Chiyou City had a special status and affection for the mountain barbarians. As the barbarian king, Ouyang Shuo had to consider their feelings. It was necessary to have this bit of magnanimity. Since Ouyang Shuo didn't mind, Fan Zhongyin naturally wouldn't say anything else. Along the way, Fan Zhongyin had a sense of the situation in Wuzhou County. Although the situation was worse than he had anticipated, Fan Zhongyin had confidence that Wuzhou County would develop. The two of them chatted in the study for the entire afternoon. During this conversation, the future development framework of Wuzhou County was set in stone. During the conversation, Ouyang Shuo discovered that choosing Fan Zhongyin to be the governor of Wuzhou was indeed a wise choice. Fan Zhongyin's development plans for Wuzhou County made Ouyang Shuo's eyes light up. For example, in order to break the frozen relationship between the Han people and the mountain barbarians in Wuzhou County, Fan Zhongyin proposed to move a portion of the mountain barbarians to the neighboring Zhaoqing County. Correspondingly, a portion of the people from Zhaoqing County moved to Wuzhou County to settle down. In this way, not only could it greatly improve the population structure of Wuzhou County, the newly arrived Han people would also help break down the barrier between the two races. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Ouyang Shuo greatly praised this move. After sending Fan Zhongyin off, Ouyang Shuo heaved a long sigh of relief. Early the next morning, Fan Zhongyin would officially take office. The 300 or so officials he had brought with him would also be placed in the various prefectures and counties, becoming the backbone of the Wuzhou County government. Fan Zhongyin's arrival finally completely freed Ouyang Shuo from the heavy burden of government affairs. Next, Ouyang Shuo should consider the problem of establishing the Wuzhou County Guard Division. Whether it was the Imperial Guard Division or the 4 Mountain Barbarian Independent Divisions, it was impossible for them to be permanently stationed in Wuzhou County. If he wanted to maintain the stability of Wuzhou County, it was imperative to establish a local guard division. Within a week, Lin Yi led the Imperial Guard Division and completely plowed through Wuzhou County. The local tyrants had been swept clean. The atmosphere of the entire Wuzhou County had been straightened out. Using this opportunity, they captured another group of mountain barbarian warriors. Inspired by Fan Zhongyin's population policy, Ouyang Shuo decided that the Wuzhou County Guard Division would also adopt a mixed and integrated organization to achieve the goal of mutual checks and balances. Immediately, Ouyang Shuo sent letters to the military office and the Lingnan war zone. According to Ouyang Shuo's plan, 2 brigades would be taken from the Zhaoqing County Guard Division in the Lingnan war zone and placed into the Wuzhou County Guard Division. The vacancies in the Zhaoqing County Guard Division would be filled by the Taiping captives from Fort Milan. Apart from this, a brigade would be formed from the surrendered soldiers of the Taiping Army and placed into the Wuzhou County Guard Division. The remaining 2 brigades would be formed from the newly entered mountain barbarian prisoners of war. In this way, the Wuzhou County Guard Division would form a 3-way balance. Whether it was the Han or the mountain barbarians, none would be able to use this to act like tyrants in Wuzhou County. The commander of the Guard Division, Ouyang Shuo, gave the order to promote 1 person from the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Brigade of the Evil Coming Division. The deputy commander would be a brigade commander from the original Zhaoqing County Guard Division. In this way, it would be equivalent to firmly controlling the Wuzhou County Guard Division. When the Wuzhou County Guard Division was completely established, Ouyang Shuo would be able to lead his troops in a Xuanzhou County from the east and completely eliminate the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Calculating the time, it would not conflict with the plans of the Dragon Xiong and Leopard armies. On the 1st of November, Fan Zhongyin officially took office. The enormous machinery of the government began to operate at high speed. It was only then that the people of Wuzhou County truly realized that Wuzhou County had truly changed. The mountain barbarians who had previously occupied the key departments were mercilessly swept out one by one. Only the mountain barbarians who had obtained the approval of the military intelligence department and the Black Snake Guards could continue to hold positions in the new government system. Seeing the officials of Shanghai City enter Chiyu City and the key departments in the city all be replaced by people of Shanghai City, the mountain barbarian tribes were completely panicked. In just one morning, they had repeatedly gone to the city lord's mansion to hand over their visiting cards and request an audience with Ouyang Shua. Seeing that the time was ripe, Ouyang Shua finally agreed to meet with the various tribe leaders in the side hall in the afternoon. In reality, Ouyang Shua was not prepared to suppress the mountain barbarian tribes to the end. The policy of Shanghai City against foreign tribes was also applicable in Wuzhou County. What Ouyang Shua wanted to do was only to remove the privileges the mountain barbarians enjoyed in Wuzhou County. From now on, the Han and mountain barbarians in the county would all be treated equally. The mountain barbarians who had been relieved of their duties could apply for another job. As long as they passed the inspection of the administrative office of Wuzhou County, they could once again take up their posts and perform their duties. Of course, the Han people in the county could also participate in similar job applications. Wuzhou County was extremely large. If they only relied on the 300 officials that Fan Zhongyan had brought, it would be difficult to maintain the operations of Chiyu City. Therefore, according to the unified framework of the territory, the rebuilt government needed a large number of low-level officials. Regrettably, the Han people living in Wuzhou County seemed to be ordinary people. True scholars and scholars were basically nowhere to be seen. This situation also made Ouyang Shua very surprised, but he could not find a solution. Seeing that the Marquis of Lianzhou did not want to kill them all, the various tribe leaders were at a loss. But at the same time, they also felt a trace of relief. We pay our respects to the king. In the side hall, the various tribe leaders knelt together and officially acknowledged Ouyang Shua's position as the barbarian king. Looking at the black mass of tribe leaders kneeling in front of him, Ouyang Shua's expression was indescribable. From beginning to end, he had used a series of methods and finally completely suppressed this group of wild and unruly mountain barbarians. Between tension and relaxation, a stick and a carrot, Ouyang Shua became more and more skilled at playing politics. Within the territory, only Ouyang Shua alone could enjoy special privileges. The others had to submit to Ouyang Shua's rule in order to survive within the territory. This was the bottom line that Ouyang Shua had set, and it could not be challenged. From today onwards, the special privileges of the mountain barbarians in Wuzhou County would really disappear like smoke in thin air. Of course, because of the existence of Chiyu City, Wuzhou County would still be the main camp and the largest gathering place of the mountain barbarians in the future. In reality, the barbarians within the borders of China were not limited to the mountain barbarians of the South Sichuan province and the South Ridge province. There were other barbarians in other regions. At the very least, there were a large number of barbarians living in the Shu region. He just did not know whether Ouyang Shua's title of the Barbarian King would be able to have a deterrent effect on the unknown barbarians in the future. The barbarians were really natural warriors. No matter which clan it was enough to move Ouyang Shua. Everyone, please rise. Ouyang Shua sat upright on the seat of honor, his voice not angry, but imposing. Thank you, Your Majesty. The various chiefs rose one by one, looking at Ouyang Shua with a different expression. In the respect, there was a faint trace of intimacy. Their expressions were exactly the same as the previous barbarian warriors. No matter what, the mountain barbarians had a new leader, and they would not really fall apart. Why is there not a single Han official in Wuzhou County? Do you know the reason? Looking at the mountain barbarians standing in the hall, Ouyang Shua suddenly thought of a question. Before Chiyu was defeated, these chiefs were all high-ranking figures of Chiyu City. They should have some understanding of this strange phenomenon. As expected, Ouyang Shua had asked the right people this time. The patriarchs looked at each other and communicated with each other with their eyes. Finally, the most respected patriarch stepped forward and respectfully replied, "Your Majesty, we are indeed aware of it. Speak." Because Chiyu does not like the Han, the civil officials in the county are all locked up in a secret prison. What? Hearing this, Ouyang Shua did not know what expression to make. He could not help but slap the table and stand up, asking anxiously, "Are these civil officials still alive?" "They are alive." The old chief thought for a moment, but still decided to tell the truth. "It's just that their situation is not good. According to what I know, some civil officials could not bear it and have already died." Ouyang Shua was really speechless towards Chiyu's actions. To be continued. Chapter 518. In a secret prison on the west side of Chiyu City, Ouyang Shua saw the civil officials that Chiyu had imprisoned. The prison was dark, and the floor was damp. Cockroaches and rats could be seen everywhere. Over 100 civil officials were imprisoned in the narrow cell. All of them were emaciated and had dispirited expressions. It was already late autumn, and they were only wearing thin prison clothes. All of them were shivering in the cold. Ouyang Shua felt his heart ache when he saw this. These civil officials were the cream of the land, but they were being tortured like this. Seeing the Marquis's gloomy face, the head of the barbarian prison guards had sweat on his forehead. Fearing that he would be reprimanded, he tactfully stepped forward and opened the cell door. Immediately, the long-awaited sunlight shone into the gloomy cell, making these prisoners somewhat uncomfortable. "Everyone, you've suffered." Ouyang Shua ignored the dirty water on the floor and walked straight into the cell. He bowed. The long imprisonment had already numbed these people's minds, and they couldn't react for a moment. On the other hand, the barbarian chiefs behind Ouyang Shua all had astonished expressions. "Everyone, this is the Marquis of Lian Province and the Southern Border Protector General. Wuzhou County has already been brought under the rule of the Southern Border Protectorate. All of you are saved." The captain of the guards, Chun Dameng, stepped forward and introduced Ouyang Shua to them. Suddenly, the prison that was quiet just now was filled with murmurs of discussion. They didn't know much about Ouyang Shua's identity, but they clearly heard Chun Dameng's last sentence, and it meant that this inhuman torture had finally come to an end. Some of the scholars couldn't help but cry on the spot. Only the eyes of an old man in the corner flashed with a bright light. Ouyang Shua also knew that this wasn't a good place to talk. He immediately ordered people to bring these civil officials to the city lord's residence and have them bathe and change their clothes. He then had people prepare meals and asked a doctor to diagnose them. The long imprisonment and the harsh environment of the prison made the bodies of the scholars weak. After this torment, many of them had probably fallen ill. According to the chief of the barbarian tribe, more than 10 people couldn't bear it and unfortunately passed away. Ouyang Shua's brows were still tightly furrowed when he walked out of the prison. From his observation, because of the long imprisonment, these civil officials were suffering from both physical and mental torture. In a short period of time, they probably couldn't be counted on to take up their posts. The next morning, Ouyang Shua received the rescued civil officials in the main hall. After careful recuperation and a good night's sleep, the officials' complexions had recovered quite a bit. Last night, they had already heard from the servants of the city lord's manor about the upheaval that had occurred in Wuzhou during this period of time. Chiyu died in battle, Wuzhou County changed hands, Shanghai City moved in, and the mountain barbarians lost their privileges. The series of drastic changes left them dumbfounded. He had a clear idea of Ouyang Shua's identity. "Greetings, Marquis. Thank you for saving my life." Hundreds of civil officials knelt down and bowed solemnly. They didn't have the slightest obstruction in their hearts towards swearing loyalty to Ouyang Shua. Being able to encounter such a wise master, what more could they ask for? "Everyone, please rise." Ouyang Shua raised his head and looked at the old man at the front of the line with an indescribable expression. Last night, Ouyang Shua had already instructed Fan Zhongyan to carry out a registration and preliminary investigation on this group of civil officials. They were indeed rare talents. Among them, there were more than 20 who were qualified to take on the position of county magistrate. There were even 2 or 3 candidates for prefectural magistrate. Among them, there was a big fish. It was the old man in front of them. The old man was none other than Pei Ju, a famous official from the Sui and Tang dynasties. Name, Peiju, imperial level. Title, Wenxi County Magistrate Dynasty. Sui and Tang dynasties. Identity, civil official of Shanghai City. Occupation, civil official. Loyalty, 70 points. Commander, 65. Martial power, 35. Intelligence, 75. Politics, 88. Specialties, erudite. Increases territorial administrative efficiency by 15 points. Increases territorial prestige by 25 points. Increases territorial integrity by 20 points. Increases territorial favorability by 10 points. Evaluation, Pei Zhu, politician, diplomat, strategist, and geographer of the Sui and Tang dynasties. As for being diligent and lax, spending all night in public office, seeking help from the ancients was almost unheard of. He has been involved in political affairs for many years. Although he was in a dangerous situation, he did not lose his integrity. Speaking of Pei Zhu, some people might not know, but in Master Huang Yi's twin of the Tang dynasty, Pei Zhu was the pseudonym of the evil king Shi Jixuan in the court. Although this was only a fabrication by a novelist, it showed Pei Zhu's influence at that time. Pei Zhu, whose real name was Shi Zhu, courtesy name Hongda, was the grandson of Pei Ta, the Jingzhou provincial governor of northern Wei, and the son of Pei Na, the crown prince of northern Qi. Born in the western branch of the Pei family in Hudong, Pei Zhu served in northern Qi, northern Zhou, and Sui dynasties in his early years. He participated in the Sui's conquest of Chun and led 3,000 soldiers to pacify the Turkic Qimin Khan. He served as the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Assistant Minister of Internal Affairs, Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, and was conferred the title of Wenxi County Magistrate. During the Dai era, Pei Zhu was still in an important position. He controlled the court with Su Wei, Yuan Shu, Pei Yun, and Yu Shiji. He managed the western region for Emperor Yang of Sui, attacked the Tiohan, and split the Turkic Khaganate. After the change of Jiangdu, Pei Zhu served Yuanji and Do Jianda and was always respected. In the 4th year of Wuda, Pei Zhu surrendered to Tang. He served as the palace assistant censor, the crown prince's left concubine's son, Crown Prince Zhan Shi, inspecting assistant minister, minister of civil affairs, and was conferred the title of Ani County Magistrate. He was highly respected by Emperor Gaozu and Emperor Taizong. In the 1st year of Jingguan, Pei Zhu died of illness at the age of 80. He was posthumously conferred the title of Jiang Prefecture's provincial governor Jing. This person's life could be said to be magnificent. Speaking of which, Pei Zhu and the fierce general of the territory, Shi Wansui, were once officials of the same palace, and the two of them had a history. In the 19th year of founding Emperor, Dulin Khan and Datu Khan allied and defeated Qimin Khan. Qimin Khan went south to submit to the Sui dynasty. Emperor I of Sui, Yang Jian, appointed Shi Wansui as the chief supervisor of the army and Pei Zhu as the chief supervisor of the army. They sent troops to Dingxiang and took the opportunity to attack the Turkic Khaganate. In the 12th month of the same year, Dulin Khan was killed by his subordinates, and Datu Khan became independent. In the 20th year of founding Emperor, Dulin Khan defeated Datu Khan, but he was killed by Emperor I of Sui. Because of this, Pei Zhu's achievements weren't recorded. He was then ordered to comfort Qimin Khan, and he was promoted to the position of left minister. If it was any other lord of the players, they might only notice Pei Zhu himself. Ouyang Shuo was different. He was more concerned about Pei Zhu's birthplace, River East Pei family. From the Wei, Jin, northern and southern dynasties to the Sui and Tang dynasties, aristocratic families were at their peak. Among them, the most famous was naturally the Guanlong group that dominated the world. Guanlong group originated from the northern Wei dynasty and flourished during the Sui and Tang dynasties. Emperor I of Sui, Yang Jian, was from Guanlong group. Even the Li family of the Tang dynasty, which replaced the Sui dynasty, was a part of Guanlong group. This group integrated the Han people of Guanlong with martial prowess and wisdom. The people in the group became ministers when they entered and generals when they left. There was no division between civil and military. Emperor Yang of Sui had wanted to eradicate Guanlong group and strengthen the centralization of power, but in the end, he fell from grace. Other than Guanlong group, River East Pei family was also an aristocratic family that couldn't be ignored. Throughout China's thousands of years of heritage, River East Pei family could be said to be a unique and prestigious family. It was one of the most famous aristocratic families in China's feudal history. According to the Pei family genealogy, the Pei family had produced 59 prime ministers, 59 generals, 55 ministers, 3 empresses for crown concubines, and so on. There were more than 600 people whose biographies were recorded in history, and more than 3,000 officials above the 7th grade. It could be said that generals and martial arts are connected, a family of dukes and marquises. In the Tang dynasty alone, River East Pei family had produced 17 prime ministers. Flipping through the 2 thick volumes of Pei family genealogy, biographies, there were nearly 200 biographies from the Han to the Qing. Every one of them had made a certain contribution to China's history. To record their achievements, it would probably take a monumental work. The Pei family's figures were as brilliant as the stars. How could such a family not attract Ouyang Shua's attention? Soon, Gaia's 3rd year was approaching. According to the game's progression in his previous life, Gaia was about to release its 2nd expansion pack after Uprising. And the following expansion pack was closely related to the aristocratic families. What kind of impact would Pei Ju's appearance have on the territory? Ouyang Shua was temporarily unable to evaluate it. Ouyang Shua was sizing up Pei Ju, and Pei Ju was sizing up Ouyang Shua. Any historical figure that appeared in the wilderness would know of Ouyang Shua, the Lord of Valor. Pei Ju was summoned to the wilderness by a player lord through a summoning talisman. He was once filled with confidence and wanted to do something great in the wilderness. Unfortunately, Pei Ju was born at the wrong time. Before he could fulfill his ambitions, there was a sudden change. After the Battle of Zhuolu ended, Qi Yu took over Wuzhou County. The player lords in the county were unable to resist and were eradicated by Qi Yu's army. It was also at that time that Pei Ju was captured and imprisoned in a secret prison. Pei Ju felt despair after being imprisoned by Qi Yu. He never expected that after half a year, there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Qi Yu died in battle, and Ouyang Shua took over Wuzhou County. Compared to his previous lord, the person in front of him was clearly more than a little better. However, the experience of being imprisoned made Pei Ju feel a little dispirited. He could no longer have any ambitions. Both of them were smart people. They only met face to face in the main hall and did not have a deep conversation. Last night, Ouyang Shua had already thought of how to settle the group of civil officials in front of him. He decided to first send them to Shanghai City to recuperate for a period of time. After the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was destroyed, he would arrange for them to become officials again. Of course, even if these civil officials recovered, Ouyang Shua would settle them in Wuzhou County. Who could guarantee that this group of scholars would not take revenge on the mountain barbarians for the sins that Qi Yu had inflicted on them? Therefore, the best way was to completely transfer them out of Wuzhou County. Of course, their families would also be sent to Shanghai City to be settled. To be continued. Chapter 519. P.S. Today was too unlucky. I lost my phone when I went out. I went to look for my phone, but I couldn't find it. I also lost my wallet. What a mess. I'm not in the mood to write at all. November 2nd, Xuanzhou County, Tianjin City. The majestic Tianjin City was like a giant dragon entrenched in the center of southern Sichuan. It was a symbol of heavenly King Hong, Xiuquan's ambition and revenge. After nearly a year of painstaking management, the population of Tianjin City had exceeded the 500,000 mark. It was comparable to a first-class county in the player's territory. Just as Ouyang Shua was meeting with the officials, Yang Xiuqing led the remaining troops and finally arrived outside Tianjin City. Long before Yang Xiuqing arrived, the news of the Southern Army's defeat at Mulan Fortress had already spread throughout Tianjin City. The atmosphere in the huge city suddenly became solemn. The civil and military officials of Heavenly State could not imagine how an elite army of 200,000 was defeated in one night. This huge blow caused the entire imperial court to be unable to breathe. The fate of Heavenly State seemed to be in danger. It was reported that on the day he received the news, Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan directly smashed his teacup in the court meeting and then left in a huff, leaving the officials in the court with an awkward expression. That day, in the palace, because a concubine accidentally mentioned Mulan Fortress in front of Hong Xiuquan, she was immediately dragged out of the palace and sentenced to death. This scene was truly chilling to the core. The entire Tianjin city was shrouded in a terrifying atmosphere. The usually bustling Tianjin city suddenly became cold and cheerless. On the city wall, groups of soldiers patrolled back and forth, their eyes sharp and their expressions serious. Everyone knew that the defeat of the Southern Army would expose the entire Xuanzhou County to the enemy. A storm was brewing and the wind was blowing. Therefore, when Yang Xiuqing led the troops to the city gate, it could be imagined what kind of gazes were cast over by the soldiers guarding the city and the surrounding citizens. Surprise, disdain, anger, curiosity, and so on. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing's expression was calm. Only the 3,000 soldiers he had brought with him felt ashamed in the face of such naked gazes. How could the army of a defeated army dare to speak bravely? A feeling of shame arose spontaneously. Every soldier wished they could cover their faces with their helmets so that they could not face the citizens in the city. The soldiers in charge of guarding the city did not dare to stop Yang Xiuqing's group. However, when one of the guards saw Yang Xiuqing and the others, he immediately ran away. Looking at the direction he was headed to, it seemed, was the Sky Emperor Palace in the city. Yang Xiuqing, on the other hand, was expressionless. She calmly led her 3,000 soldiers through the city gate and headed straight for the barracks in the city. Those who didn't know better would have thought that the defeat not long ago had never happened. The secret agent that the Black Snake Guard planted beside Yang Xiuqing could not help but nod when he saw Yang Xiuqing's performance. Yang Xiuqing was indeed an extraordinary person. Just based on his qi cultivation, not many people could match up to him. Everyone knew that Yang Xiuqing, as the commander of the army, could not escape the blame for this great defeat. The wrath of a heavenly monarch was so bloody and brutal. Almost every day, there were people who were reprimanded or punished by the heavenly king. They were ministers who advised him, concubines who served him, or guards who neglected their duties. The annihilation of his southern army seemed to have caused Hong Xiuquan's hidden negative emotions to erupt. His entire person suddenly became extremely furious, and he found everyone to be an eyesore. A huge sense of defeat pressed down on Hong Xiuquan's head, making him want to go crazy. As long as he thought that the great plan that he had painstakingly planned could be buried alive because of this defeat, Hong Xiuquan wanted to skin Yang Xiuqing alive. As the saying went, if the heavens wanted him dead, he would go crazy. At this moment, Hong Xiuquan was on the verge of going crazy. Under such a situation, Yang Xiuqing's fate could already be predicted. Being able to leave her corpse intact was probably the best outcome. Not only Yang Xiuqing, but her family would also be slaughtered. The scene of history was probably going to happen once more. However, Yang Xiuqing did not choose to surrender to Shanghai City, nor did she choose to lead her troops to escape into the forest. Instead, she resolutely rushed back to Tianjin City. All of this was really hard to understand. In reality, as early as 2 days ago, Hong Xiuquan had already learned of the whereabouts of Yang Xiuqing's group through the secret information network that he controlled. Thus, truthfully speaking, Hong Xiuquan also could not see through Yang Xiuqing's confidence. Because of Yang Xiuqing's return, the once deserted Tianjin City became turbulent. The strange thing was that on this day, whether it was Hong Xiuquan or Yang Xiuqing, neither of them did anything extra. Yang Xiuqing peacefully entered the army camp, and Hong Xiuquan did not summon him. Everything seemed calm and tranquil. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that this was just the calm before the storm. It was reported that when Yang Xiuqing arrived at the army camp, he arranged for a trusted guard to rush to the Sky Emperor Palace and sent a secret letter to Sky Emperor Hong Xiuquan. It was this secret letter that temporarily saved Yang Xiuqing's life. Other than the person involved, no one knew what was said in the secret letter that could actually make the murderous Hong Xiuquan endure. It was precisely because of this that the undercurrents in the city became more and more turbulent. Especially with the disturbance of the Military Intelligence Division and the Black Snake Guards, the entire Tianjin city became a pool of muddy water. All the forces were probing each other. Those with a bit of power tried to see through the thick fog to see the direction of the political situation in Heavenly State. Unfortunately, this was destined to be an extravagant hope, because Shanghai City, which had been plotting for a long time, finally revealed its sharp claws and teeth. In the afternoon of November 2nd, Qiyu City, after being received by Ouyang Shaw, the hundreds of civil officials who had been secretly imprisoned by Qiyu left for Shanghai City with their families. Among all the civil officials, only one person stayed. He was Pei Ju, because according to Ouyang Shua's arrangement, Pei Ju would follow him to Xuanzhou County. Pei Ju was a person who was skilled in both literature and martial arts. He was really a rare and important official. Therefore, on this quiet afternoon, Ouyang Shua received Pei Ju alone in the study. For the first time, the ruler and his official opened their hearts and spoke freely. Ouyang Shua knew that he had to use a grand undertaking to reignite Pei Ju's heroic spirit. Therefore, Ouyang Shua not only told Pei Ju his plan to annihilate the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, but he also told Pei Ju his plan for the coming year. After listening to Ouyang Shua's grand blueprint, Pei Ju could not help but be fascinated. If Ouyang Shua's blueprint could be realized, how could his great undertaking be inferior to the Great Tang? It only took an hour for Ouyang Shua to convince Pei Ju and gain his approval. Pei Ju could only smile bitterly at this. Accompanying the army on this expedition was to give Pei Ju a chance to experience the Shanghai City Army up close. On November 3rd, Ouyang Shua led his troops and left Qiyu City. The army that accompanied him included the 3,000 Divine Guards, the Imperial Guard Division, and 3 Mountain Barbarian Independent Divisions. Only the Mountain Barbarian 4th Independent Division, which was the division prepared for the Iron Armored Beast Division, was temporarily stationed in Qiyu City and was responsible for the area security before the Wuzhou County Guard Division was formed. This time, Ouyang Shua led his troops from Qiyu City and advanced all the way to the northwest. They went straight to the border of Guilin County and Xuanzhou County, completely blocking Hong Xiuquan's path to the north. The next day, the Dragonxiang Army and the Leopard Army also split into 2 groups and officially attacked Xuanzhou County. The campaign to encircle and annihilate the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom officially began. To be continued. Chapter 520. On the 4th day of the 11th month, the situation in the southwest changed drastically. The 3 armies of Shanghai City split up and attacked together, encircling Xuanzhou County with the force of a thunderbolt. In the east, the Dragonxiang Army, led by Bai Qi, unleashed a monstrous massacre along the way. Anyone who resists stubbornly will be killed without mercy. There was a city that had sworn to never surrender. When the city was breached, all the citizens were slaughtered by the army. White bones howled and smoke filled the air. The fire in the city lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before it was extinguished by a sudden downpour. Perhaps even the heavens did not want to see such a tragedy again. The world was in an uproar when the news came out. The name of the god of slaughter once again intimidated the people. The Hell's Blood Army made all the cities in the eastern part of Xuanzhou County uneasy. After the battle, the defenders in the cities abandoned the city and fled before Bai Qi's army arrived. The citizens who stayed behind did not dare to tarry. They fearfully opened the gates and surrendered. The Dragonxiang army, led by Bai Qi, did not do anything to those who surrendered. Countless people surrendered after the news came out. As a result, the Dragonxiang army was invincible. No one could stop them. Hong Xiuquan was furious when he heard the news. He beheaded the 3 generals who had abandoned the city and hung their heads on the city gates. Only then did the situation improve a little. Even so, Bai Qi's army continued to advance triumphantly in the east. In the west, the Leopard army, led by Han Xin, carried out a nimble battle strategy. Strictly speaking, this was the first time Han Xin had led an army to attack a city. In the previous 2 battles, they had either been defensive or surprise attacks. Han Xion's ability to command troops was superior to that of attacking cities. Perhaps because of Bai Qi's provocation, Han Xion used his full strength this time. He could lure the enemy out of the city, launch a sneak attack, launch a frontal assault, or surround and annihilate them. He could flexibly choose different tactics according to the situation. They swept through the city like a hot knife through butter. The westward march this time had a trace of Han Xion's astonishing momentum when he led a lone army to sweep through 4 countries in one fell swoop. No matter what kind of predicament he faced, Han Xion could think of a way to deal with it. The name of the war, Immortal, spread like wildfire. The eastern and western armies were like a pair of peerless geniuses, shining brightly in the southwest sky. The entire southern part of Xuanzhou groaned in pain under the iron hooves of the army. In the north, Ouyang Shua's troops were steadily advancing. Lin Yi had led the Janissaries away from the main force early in the morning, charging forward like a storm and blocking the road from Xuanzhou to Guilin. After several bloody battles, the 2 most important passes had completely fallen into the hands of the Imperial Guard Division. The strength of the Imperial Guard Division once again made the enemy tremble. Ouyang Shua led the 3 barbarian mountain divisions, reaping the spoils of war along the way. Compared to the armies from the east and west, Ouyang Shua was much dimmer. Fortunately, there was still Pei Ju to give advice from the side, so they wouldn't lose too badly. Even so, the northern side of Xuanzhou County was in a constant state of emergency. After all, the 4 regiments led by Ouyang Shua were all ace regiments, not to mention the Divine Martial Guard as the vanguard. Under the pincer attack of the 3 armies, Xuanzhou County was in imminent danger. In the short span of a week, nearly half of Xuanzhou County had fallen into enemy hands, a city falling almost every day. The 3 armies were about to approach Tianjing City in the center of Xuanzhou County. In an instant, Tianjing City was in a state of emergency. Panic spread and fermented in the city. Some of the citizens in the city were already packing their belongings, ready to evacuate to the west at any time. Affected by the war, the prices of goods in the city rose continuously. The price of rice alone had tripled in one day. The rise in prices spurred the citizens to rush to buy. It was a vicious cycle, and the prices became more and more outrageous as time went on. Faced with such a situation, the ruler of Heavenly Country really had no experience. He could only use the army to forcefully suppress and kill the big merchants who were waiting for an opportunity to hoard goods. In a day, 2 merchants were sealed up by the government. In this way, although the prices of goods were temporarily stabilized, it made the people even more anxious. Some merchants were afraid of being caught in the crossfire and began to secretly transfer their goods, fleeing Tianjing City. Before Hong Xiuquan realized it, the goods in the city were already disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Using the super trading platform, they were all sold out. Other than the panic among the citizens, the court was not at peace either. As bad news came one after another, the civil and military officials could no longer sit still. In the court of Taiping Heavenly Country, there was endless debate about this. The civil and military officials all had their own opinions on whether to abandon the city and flee or to defend it. Without a doubt, the civil and military officials were in favor of peace and wanted to retreat, while the military officials were in favor of war and wanted to fight to the death. Neither side could convince the other, and in the end, it was up to Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan to decide. The crux of the problem was that Tianjing City was the capital of Taiping Heavenly Country, and its significance was extraordinary. Unless it was absolutely necessary, it could not be given up easily, because once they gave up Tianjing City, It was equivalent to declaring the end of heavenly country. Even Hong Xiuquan did not dare to make such a decision. In the end, after 2 days of debate, Hong Xiuquan decided to call back the Western Punitive Army and prepare for a life and death battle with Shanghai City and Tianjin City. At the same time, Hong Xiuquan also arranged for people to secretly rush to Guilin County in the north to arrange a retreat route. As the saying goes, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. After being reborn, Hong Xiuquan was no longer a rigid person. He knew to leave a way out for himself. In addition to calling back the Western Punitive Army, Hong Xiuquan also ordered the garrisons to quickly rush to Tianjin City to rescue the king. Those who dared to disobey would be killed without mercy. In an instant, the garrisons of the 3 counties were all gathered in Tianjin City. From the looks of it, Hong Xiuquan could still defend Tianjin City. No matter what, Tianjin City was where his blood and sweat were. How could he give it up so easily? In addition to calling back the army, Hong Xiuquan finally made a decision on how to deal with the criminal Yang Xiuqing. After the court meeting that day, Yang Xiuqing received an edict from the Heavenly King to move out of the military camp and return to the residence to reflect on his mistakes. Without being summoned, he was not allowed to leave the residence. This was equivalent to saying that Yang Xiuqing was under house arrest. Such an ending was already a great favor from the heavens. Perhaps, to Hong Xiuquan, when the heavenly country was in danger, he did not want to kill a general for nothing and disrupt the morale of the army. No matter what, Yang Xiuqing's loyalty to the heavenly country seemed to be witnessed by heaven and earth. In the smoke of war, the entire Tianjin City was shrouded in an undercurrent. As the army of Shanghai City approached, this undercurrent became more and more turbulent, but also more and more obscure. Everything seemed to be overshadowed by the war. Only on the day of its outbreak would one be able to truly witness its power. November 7th, Lingxi City. On top of the city wall, Bai Hua finally heaved a long sigh of relief as he watched the Taiping army retreat like the tide. After a series of battles, the Taiping Heavenly Country's Western Army, under the command of the famous General Shi Dakai, continued to advance tenaciously, slowly but steadily attacking the city. Until 2 days ago, when the army even approached the headquarters of Lingxi City. Seeing that Lingxi City was surrounded by the Taiping army, Bai Hua's brow furrowed. Just when the soldiers thought that a bloody battle was about to break out at the top of Lingxi City, the menacing Taiping army unexpectedly chose to retreat. The root of all the problems was naturally the summons from Hong Xiuquan. Slightly calming his emotions, Bai Hua turned to the surrounding generals and cupped his fists. Thank you all for your help. On behalf of Lingxi City, Bai Hua is deeply grateful. The opposing generals included Zhang Liao and Chao Qin of Lingxi City, Luo Shixin of Shanghai City, Dragon-Seeking Acupoint and Qin Xiong of Dragon-Seeking City, and finally the Adventurer Group, led by Bright Moon Illuminates the River. Even with such a grand lineup, Shi Dakai still led his troops to attack Lingxi City. Shi Dakai was indeed worthy of being the #1 general of the Taiping army. Of course, the 3 generals who followed Shi Dakai, Xiao Chaogui, Feng Yinshan, and Li Kaifeng, were not easy to deal with. Lord Bai Hua, you are too polite. We are only following orders. Luo Shixin was the first to speak on behalf of Shanghai City. That's right. The alliance of mountains and seas is a family. There's no need to be polite. Dragon-Seeking Acupoint also spoke at the right time. During this period of time, whether it was the Siege Lions or the Dragon-Seeking Acupoint, they seemed to be quietly adjusting their positions in the alliance. Before this, the 2 of them were still confident that they could stand on equal footing with Ouyang Shaw. But now, seeing that their side was not doing anything, Shanghai City was becoming more and more powerful. The 2 of them vaguely respected Ouyang Shaw a little. Precisely because of this, when Ouyang Shaw asked him to rush to Lingxi City's aid, the Dragon-Seeking Acupoint nodded without hesitation and did not add any other conditions. In the current alliance, only Bai Hua and Feng Qiuhuang had the confidence to stand on equal footing with Ouyang Shaw. And after experiencing this battle, Bai Hua's attitude would probably undergo a subtle change. In the future, Ouyang Shua's position in the alliance of mountains and seas would become more and more secure. Everyone, don't just stand there. Come, let's go back to the manor to chat. The one who spoke was Chao Can. Ever since he joined Lingxi City after the Battle of Giant Deer, Chao Can's role in Lingxi City was equivalent to that of a prime minister. He was in charge of the affairs of the territory and was deeply trusted and appreciated by Bai Hua. That night, Bai Hua hosted a banquet in the manor to entertain the generals. The allies who rushed to reinforce were also rewarded with money and wine. The entire Lingxi City was filled with a joyous and peaceful atmosphere. Since Shi Dakai had led his troops to retreat, why didn't the army of Lingxi City follow him? Even if they could not defeat him, they could at least delay the return of the Taiping army and buy time for the army of Shanghai City. There were naturally reasons for this. Firstly, Shi Dakai was not an ordinary person. Even if he led his troops to retreat in a hurry, he would advance and retreat in a measured manner. He would not give the enemy any chance to take advantage of him. Secondly, it involved Ouyang Shua's overall strategy. Rather than chasing after the Western Army, Ouyang Shua suggested that the army stationed in Lingxi City should play a big game. To be continued. Chapter 5:21. Lingxi City, the main hall of the Marquis' mansion. After the banquet, the generals did not disperse, but gathered together to discuss matters. Regarding the military affairs discussed tonight, all the generals had a rough idea in their hearts. Therefore, although the banquet was lively, everyone controlled themselves and did not drink, keeping their heads clear. As the host, Bai Hua sat at the head of the table. Sitting on the left was naturally the representative of Lingxi City. In addition to the two generals, Chao Can and Zhang Liao, Violet, Red Eagle, and Cyan Robe were also there. Sitting on the right were the representatives of the Allied forces. There were only 3 of them: Dragon-Seeking Acupoint, Luo Shixin, and Qin Xiong. The only exception was that Moon Illuminates the River did not appear in the main hall. In fact, as soon as the banquet ended, the adventurer players all teleported back to Dali City through the teleportation formation. As for the military operations of Lingxi City, they would no longer participate. After this battle, Breeze Pavilion suffered heavy losses. Of the guild's elite combat teams, 5 were annihilated and 6 were crippled. Although they had received generous compensation and rewards, the Cool Breeze Pavilion still needed to heal their wounds and recover their strength as soon as possible. After all, there were several guilds in Dali City that had been coveting Breeze Pavilion as position. Seeing that Breeze Pavilion, his strength had suffered a setback, there was no guarantee that these people would not have any ambitions. Fortunately, Bright Moon Illuminates the River might look bold and unrestrained on the outside, but his methods were also extraordinary. He and Bai Hua, the brother and sister, were really the best of the best among professional players. Breeze Pavilion's demonstration participation this time caused a small wave in the China region. Adventurer players formed mercenary armies to fight for the Lord players and collect rewards. It seemed to have become a new game mode. Although the risk was great, the rewards were quite amazing. In addition to the most common reward of gold coins, some Lord players directly opened weapons, equipment, martial arts manuals, and other items that adventurer players dreamed of. As the saying goes, when there is a great reward, there will be brave men. In the current China region, there were even professional mercenary guilds. They directly changed the name of the guild to a certain mercenary group. Not only did they change the name, but the entire structure of the mercenary group also underwent a restructuring and reorganization. The members of a mercenary group were basically all combat personnel. Moreover, in order to adapt to the battlefield and the wilderness, their class combinations had also been constantly experimented with and innovated. It was completely different from the combinations used for leveling and dungeoning. There were leveling teams of all classes, and balance was the most important thing. Mercenary group members were different. They needed to survive on the battlefield. What they faced wasn't small-scale battles, but large-scale battles. Therefore, the occupation of the mercenaries had to be highly unified. On the battlefield, adventurer players had to treat themselves as ordinary soldiers. In this way, they would be able to carry out orders and prohibitions, and not be in a state of disunity. Some of the guilds that couldn't go on could even rise from the ashes and shine brightly after this change. Most of these guilds were combat-type guilds, but they were not good at managing. Mercenaries were tailor-made for them. In this way, the player lord and the mercenary group had each other's strengths and weaknesses and were in perfect harmony. The lord would provide strong logistical support, and the mercenary group would contribute their combat power. It was an equivalent exchange. If this trend continued, the future mercenary groups would become closer and closer to the army. It wasn't just the combination of classes, it was also the same in the formation of battles and the command of battles. Powerful mercenary groups were like mobile combat divisions. It was reported that the major guilds, especially the top 10 guilds, had already noticed this problem. According to Lin Jing's letter, Snow Rose was already preparing to set up a professional mercenary group under the guild. For this, Lin Jing also wanted to apply for a quota of weapons and equipment from the Alliance. It could be said that the Breeze Pavilion's first trial was deeply changing the structure of the players in the China server. The seemingly insurmountable boundary between adventurer players and overlord players was slowly being broken. As someone who had been reborn, Ouyang Shaw understood that all of this was the trend of the times. Moreover, in the West, where the mercenary group culture was the most developed, this model had long since matured. In his previous life, it was only a year later that mercenary groups really became popular in the China server. Ouyang Shaw, this butterfly, was constantly changing the course of history. Of course, for a territory like Shanghai City, it was disdainful to hire mercenary groups. From Ouyang Shaw's point of view, instead of spending a lot of money to feed a group of greedy ingrates, it was better to train a territorial army that was absolutely obedient to the overlord. However, in the eyes of some small and medium-sized lords, mercenaries had an irresistible allure. Most importantly, compared to a territorial army, mercenaries had two major advantages. First, mercenaries didn't need time to train. As long as they had money, a lord could recruit an army at any time and start a war. Whether it was defense or attack, they could do it with ease. And it took at least 3 months to train a territorial army. Therefore, the more dangerous the situation, the more popular mercenaries were. Second, mercenaries were cheap. Although in the long run, it was more cost-effective to train a territorial army. But in the short run, the cost of hiring a mercenary group couldn't compare to the cost of building an army. After all, building an army required not only the transfer fee, but also enough weapons and equipment, as well as pay. All of these were not small expenses. Because of these 2 points, the market for mercenaries would only become more and more popular. It could even be said that some great lords, including Di Chun and the others, could not rule out the possibility of temporarily hiring mercenary groups to assist in battle in times of crisis. In other words, the appearance of mercenary groups indirectly gave Di Chun and the other great forces a very useful trump card. After all, the resources in their territory were quite abundant. More importantly, through the form of mercenaries, the participation of adventure-type players in the game would increase. The rise of the status of adventure-type players would also become the general trend. And this was also what Gaia hoped for. In addition to screening out Lord-type talents, Earth on Lu should also benefit the entire population. As the highest level of artificial intelligence, Gaia scrupulously abided by the path of neutrality and would never be partial to one side. In the main hall, Chao Kan, as a representative, reported the battle losses after the battle. In this battle, facing the 200,000 Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's West Army, all the divisions suffered relatively large losses. The greatest loss was naturally the Lingxi City Army, which was at the forefront, directly losing more than 50,000 people. In addition, Luo Shixin's division lost more than 1,600 people, and the division of Dragon-Seeking City lost more than 2,000 people. After the battle, all the divisions were riddled with scars. But according to Ouyang Shua's overall arrangement, it was not time for the divisions to rest. Although Ouyang Shuo deliberately indulged the main reason for the Taiping Army's west expedition this time, the most obvious reason was that the lords of South Cloud Province stood by and did nothing. In particular, the lord of Kunming County not only did not help, but also deployed his army at the border, eyeing Lingxi City covetously, causing Lingxi City to have to be distracted. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo suggested that the army stationed in Lingxi City should seize this rare opportunity while the Taiping army had just retreated and the other lords had not received the news yet. They should quietly turn their spear and directly annihilate the other lords in Kunming County, so that Lingxi City could unify Kunming County. It had to be said that Ouyang Shuo's idea was really bold. Even Bai Hua did not react for a moment when he heard it. But when he thought about it carefully, it was very practical. Firstly, although Lingxi City had suffered heavy casualties, if Luo Shixin's division and Longshuan City's division were included, their strength would actually increase instead of decreasing. Because both Luo Shixin's division and Longshuan City's division were first-class ace divisions. In order to help Lingxi City, Longshuan City had also put in a lot of effort this time. They had sent the heavy cavalry division, trained by Qin Xiong, over. The equipment of this division was similar to that of the Shanghai City Imperial Guard Division. Longshuan City had spent almost all of its money to purchase all of its equipment from Shanghai City. Radiant armor, long spears, tang knives, and strong crossbows were all equipped. Coupled with the valiant General Qin Xiong's command, their combat strength was not inferior to Luo Shixin's division. As for the Lingxi City army, after the tempering of this battle, not only had the soldiers' levels increased explosively, but their individual strength had also greatly increased. More importantly, their combat experience had also increased. Not every territory's army could be like the army of Shanghai City, constantly undergoing the baptism of actual combat. Ordinary territories' armies could only have the opportunity to display their skills on the battle map. In normal times, they would only be suppressing bandits. But Shanghai City was different. It had been expanding and had experienced many battles. Because of this, the army of Shanghai City would become stronger and stronger, and the gap between them and the armies of other territories would become wider and wider. It could be said that only those who had experienced the tempering of blood and fire could become a truly strong army. The Lingxi City army had undoubtedly experienced such a tempering this time. Coupled with the General Zhang Liao's command, the Lingxi City army could now be called a strong army in the China region. The combination of these two factors was the basis of their confidence in this expedition. Secondly, it was unexpected. The lords of Kunming County were only interested in watching the show. They probably never dreamed that the army of Lingxi City would brandish the butcher's knife against them at this time. Because it was unexpected, whether it was the lords of Kunming County or Yunnan Province, they did not have the time to form an alliance to fight against the strong enemy. Therefore, as long as they planned carefully, they would be able to win the battle. As long as they completely occupied Kunming County, Lingxi City would be able to truly gain a foothold in Yunnan Province. No other lords, including the alliance, would be able to challenge their leadership. After all, Kunming County occupied 1/3 of the territory of Yunnan Province. To be continued. Chapter 522. The military meeting in Lingxi City did not disperse until late at night. In the night sky, a comet streaked across the sky and disappeared into the west. The military meeting unanimously decided that Zhang Liao would lead the army of Lingxi City as the central army, Luo Shixin's division as the left army, and Qin Xiong's division as the right army. Spirit Rhino City had also arranged for a guide battalion to lead the way for their allies on the left and right sides of the army. Early the next morning, the three armies would set off at the same time and attack the dozen or so territories in the west of Kunming County at lightning speed. They would conquer the entire territory of Kunming County within 4 days. Chao Kin was appointed as the chief logistics officer of the army, responsible for supervising the transportation of provisions and supplies for the army, assigning officials to take over cities and other military and political affairs. After handing over the army to Qin Xiong, the dragon-seeking acupoint would return to dragon-seeking city the next morning. As the lord of a territory, the dragon-seeking acupoint could not leave the territory for a long time, especially when dragon-seeking city did not have any capable internal affairs personnel. At the same time, the dragon-seeking acupoint left Lingxi City to avoid arousing suspicion. Different from the previous defensive battles, the attack this time was an active attack on other territories, which would inevitably involve the division of the spoils. The dragon-seeking acupoint left early, naturally indicating that they did not want to participate in the division. For the Mountain and Sea Alliance, the expedition of Mountain and Sea City and Dragon-Seeking City was the first time the Alliance had sent out reinforcements. Some internal coordination mechanisms had not been perfected yet. In the future, this area must be strengthened. After all, it was fine once or twice, but if they had to help allies frequently in the future, they could not really help for free. That would only leave hidden dangers within the alliance. In this situation, Ouyang Shua had no time to care about this. November 8th, Kunming County. For Kunming County, this day was especially memorable. The situation in the wilderness was changing rapidly. Within a day, the original situation in Kunming County was completely overturned. When the sun had just risen into the sky, the three armies had already appeared at the western border. The armies stationed at the border of the various territories of Kunming County were leisurely basking in the sun. They did not know that a shocking change had already arrived. The three armies, with cavalry as the main force, charged forward ferociously. The rumbling of the horses' hooves caused the ground to tremble. Before the border guards could react, the army had brazenly crossed the border and launched a fierce attack on them. Everything had happened too suddenly. It was so sudden that even the beacons at the borders had not been lit yet, and the border guards had already been defeated. The three armies were led by three ferocious generals. Filled with the morale of vengeance, they destroyed everything in their path. How could ordinary border guards be a match for such a trump card? What was worse was that these border guards did not have a strong city to defend. In the face of elite cavalry, they could only be trampled on in the wilderness. More often than not, with a single charge, the enemy's hastily formed formation would scatter. The war horses neighed, and the soldiers whizzed past. A forest of swords and spears stood in the brilliant frost wilderness. Wherever the army passed, corpses were strewn everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. The red clouds in the sky above Xuanzhou County grew thicker, and a monstrous killing intent soared into the heavens. At the rear of the army, Chao-Ken led the local garrison troops. Like a street sweeper, they detained prisoners of war, cleaned up the battlefield, took over the cities, and issued announcements to pacify the people. Everything was in order. Violet and Cyan had been sent by Hua to serve as Chao-Ken's assistants. As for Hong Ying, one of the four beauties, she was directly appointed as the commander of the brigade in Lingxi City's army. After defeating the border guards, the vast army did not stop and directly advanced into the depths of the west. They were like a pack of wild wolves that had awoken in winter, forever chasing after the fattest prey. Because they had to fight for time, the three armies did not stop at the subsidiary cities. Instead, they circled around them and headed straight for the headquarters of the various territories. Their top priority was to destroy the stone tablets in those territories. The garrison troops in the subsidiary cities could not pose a threat to the main army. If they dared to act presumptuously, the follow-up troops led by Chao-Ken would take care of them. Thus, Chao-Ken's role was to clear away all worries for the main army. The three armies only had one mission, and that was to attack, attack, and attack. Attacking and uprooting the strongholds was their top priority. Sweeping through Xuanzhou Commandery was their mission. How ferocious would a cavalry unit that had no worries about the rear be? Some territories only reacted when the main army reached the gates of their cities. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Everywhere the army passed, not a blade of grass grew. The sky above Xuanzhou Commandery was filled with bloody light. Right now, in the wilderness, the main focus was to exterminate the three rebel army groups. But at this time, a war between the lords of Lingxi City had brazenly started. This war was even more bloody and cruel. In the wilderness, only the strong were worthy of survival. The weak could only live in the capital. In a war between lords, there was only victory and defeat. There was no middle path to choose. Even surrendering had become an extravagant hope. The wolves are here. It was only in the afternoon that the entire Kunming commandery let out a cry of terror. Unfortunately, it was all too late. How could a group of slow-witted sheep resist a group of vicious wolves that had long since been eyeing them covetously? The raging flames of war spread from east to west. The lords were terrified, the people were crying, and countless soldiers were lying in pools of blood. The western region, which had been peaceful in the morning, had instantly turned into a purgatory, filled with smoke and the flames of war. No one knew what had happened. The lords had paid a heavy price for their laughable ambition. The authority of the alliance of mountains and seas cannot be challenged by anyone. Ouyang Shuo reaffirmed this sonorous and powerful oath with his actions. It was only at this time that the lords who had reincarnated in Royal City were filled with regret. Only then did they understand a fact. Without the strength, they should not attempt to challenge the giant alliance of mountains and seas. Once challenged, they should be prepared to fight to the death. Their mistake was that they didn't have this awareness. They provoked a lion, yet they still dared to sleep peacefully. The reason why Ouyang Shuo wanted to sweep through Kunming Commandery was to re-establish the authority of the alliance of mountains and seas. In the wilderness, blood and fire were always the most powerful weapons. It was not until the next day that the surviving territories reacted and wanted to form a temporary alliance. Unfortunately, all of this was destined to be in vain. The speed at which the cavalry advanced was too fast, so fast that it left people in the dust. On the first day alone, 4 territories had fallen. There were only 9 territories left in Kunming Commandery. The 3 armies had already reached their doorstep. Who could expect these lords to calm down and carefully weigh the pros and cons? The only thing they wanted was to hope that there would be reinforcements that could help them out of the abyss of suffering. Unfortunately, there were too many people who had this idea. Who to save? Who not to save? Everything was up in the air. The lords who had hurriedly contacted each other could not reach a consensus in a short period of time. In addition, Kunming Commandery lacked a lord of virtue and prestige, causing the hurried meeting to become a mess. The hall was noisy and everyone was talking at once. After discussing for the whole morning, they were so noisy that their ears were deaf, but they still could not come up with a feasible plan. And at this time, the blade of Lingxi City did not stop for a moment. The people in their territory were still groaning under the iron hooves of the enemy. After noon, some lords finally gave up hope and turned to leave, trying to stop a chariot. In the end, this alliance could only disperse on bad terms, and they could only leave it to fate. The last glimmer of hope of Kunming Commandery turned into a bubble. Their fates could be easily imagined. The advance of the army of Lingxi City was unusually smooth. Wherever the weapon pointed, it was simply invincible. The successive victories boosted the morale and swept away the haze of the confrontation with the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Western Army. The army was imposing and murderous. At the end of the war, some territories simply gave up resistance and opened the door to surrender. This kind of power made the lords of the other 4 counties of the Yunnan province feel waves of fear and trepidation. The wolf is coming. The entire Yunnan province let out such an urgent cry. The lords of Southern Cloud province could not be sure whether Lingxi City's target was only Kunming Commandery or the entire Yunnan province. How much support did the alliance of mountains and seas provide to Lingxi City? After all, from the feedback from the battlefield, the armies of Shanghai City and Dragon-Seeking City had appeared. In the later stages of the war, who could guarantee that the armies of other members would not arrive as scheduled? Especially when the news of Shanghai City encircling Xuanzhou Commandery spread, the entire China region was shaken. Among the four rebel armies, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom could at least be ranked in the top two. To think that such a powerful revolutionary army would be taken care of by a single Shanghai City force. The strength of Shanghai City once again shocked the world. In comparison, the situation of the Central Plains seemed somewhat laughable. Whether it was Lord Chunxin or Wandering Huan, they had not made any progress recently, and were no longer as glorious as before. As a result, it also caused disharmony within the Allied army, and the sound of retreat was already quietly heard. Shanghai City's victory had indirectly placed a great deal of pressure on Lord Chunxin and Piaolinghuan. According to the news that the Black Snake Guards had received, Lord Chunxin and Wandering Huan seemed to have put aside their grudges and were showing signs of joining forces against the enemy. The Allied army led by Di Chun had also already moved south to the border. It could be said that whether or not they could take care of Zhang Chu's regime was a test of the Yellow Flame Alliance. The situation in the wilderness had already quietly begun to reverse. Even the Allied army led by the Siege Lion, borrowing the power of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, was restless. It was precisely because of this that the lords of Yunnan province were increasingly fearful. As a result, the voices calling for the formation of the Yunnan city-state became more and more intense. As for Kunming Commandery, they had already decided to ignore it. To be continued. Chapter 5:23. Kunming County, Lingxi City. On the 10th day of November, the war gradually subsided. In just 3 days, one day earlier than expected, Kunming County was unified. After this battle, the power of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas rose against the trend and was unparalleled for a time. After the war, the army immediately returned to the city. After Qin Xiong led the Dragon-Seeking City Regiment back, they immediately teleported back to Dragon-Seeking City. Baihua took the initiative to pay the teleportation fee. Although Lingxi City's finances were tight recently, Baihua was still very generous. After a short rest, the cavalry regiment led by Luo Shixin would break into Zhan and county of South Sichuan province and follow the retreating Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Western Army. Next, there would be a big battle in Tianjing City, and Luo Shixin did not want to miss it. In order to repay Shanghai City's help, Baihua arranged for Zhang Liao to lead an elite cavalry regiment to accompany Luo Shixin's regiment and enter Jin County. Although the lords of the other 4 counties of Yunnan province were already preparing to establish the Yunnan city-state, Baihua was not too worried about it. The establishment of a city was not an easy task. If there was no one with prestige to take the lead, it was normal to drag on for 10 days to half a month. After the establishment of the city-state, the formation of the Allied army also took a long time. Therefore, Lingxi City had enough time to digest the territory they had just occupied. After 3 days of war, Lingxi City captured more than 60,000 prisoners of war, making up for the losses they had suffered in the previous battle with the Taiping army, and even had a slight surplus. According to Baihua's plan, Lingxi City would use Shanghai City's military model as a reference, officially forming the City Guard Division, the Field Army, and the Kunming County Guard Division. The City Guard Regiment would be led by Hong Ying and would be responsible for protecting Lingxi City. The Field Regiment would be established according to the latest establishment of Shanghai City, with a total of 70,000 people, led by Zhang Liao. As for the Kunming County Garrison Regiment, it would naturally be used to guard the entire Kunming County. Such a large army was also Baihua's biggest trump card against the Yunnan city-state. The only disadvantage was that Kunming County was bordered by the other 4 counties of Yunnan province, and the long border would place a greater burden on the territory's defense. Secondly, even if the Yunnan city-state was established with the current power of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, they would not dare to take the initiative to attack Kunming County. In a sense, Yunnan city-state was just a strategic defensive alliance. With the establishment of the Lingnan city-state, the term city-state instantly became popular in China. In fact, the Lingnan city-state was the only city-state in the real sense. Even a nearby city-state of Xiangnan still had all kinds of problems that needed to be solved. Every lord was ambitious. Although the existence of the city-states protected the safety of the territory from the invasion of the great lords. But at the same time, it also weakened the possibility of the feudal lord expanding again. Within the same province, the lords coexisted peacefully. This type of interaction was a bit out of place with the main tone of the wilderness. The weak were naturally happy to be able to protect themselves. Experts, on the other hand, felt a little uncomfortable when their hands and feet were bound. Once the external pressure disappeared, the internal conflicts would burst forth. Unless there was a truly powerful person who could unify the resources within the city and truly link the interests of the various feudal lords into one. Otherwise, the city-state would not last long. In the 5 years of his previous life, there were less than 3 true city-states in the whole of China. 10 days had passed since Shanghai City's army set out for Xuanzhou County. In just 10 days, more than half of Xuanzhou County's territory had fallen. The 3 armies firmly advanced toward Tianjin City. The largest war in the Southwest War Zone was about to break out. At the same time, the Western Army led by Shi Dakai was only 1 day away from Tianjin City. Behind the Western Route Army, 2 cavalry divisions followed them like ghosts. Jinan County was, after all, the territory of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Therefore, Luo Shixin's division and Zhang Liao's division did not really escape Shi Dakai's eyes. It was just that Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan's imperial orders came one day after another, each more urgent than the last. Shi Dakai had no time to pay attention to anything else. Shi Dakai could only pretend that he did not see the tail behind him. He only strengthened the arrangements of the rear army. Shi Dakai's cautiousness in using troops was evident. To the north of Xuanzhou County, the Mountain Barbarian Independent Division, led by Ouyang Shua, had already taken over the defense of the 2 passes. The Imperial Guard Division that had attacked the passes had suddenly disappeared from the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's sight. In the south, the eastern and western armies led by Bai Qi and Han Xin were still as imposing as ever. Considering the current situation, Hong Xiuquan had already withdrawn all the local garrisons in the south back to Tianjin City. Precisely because of this, the southern part of Xuanzhou County had fallen in advance and become Shanghai City's hunting ground. It seemed that Hong Xiuquan had hardened his heart to rely on Tianjin City's strong walls and cannons to defend the city. It was reported that Hong Xiuquan had set up a total of 24 cannons on Tianjin City's walls. When Ouyang Shua received the news, he could not help but tremble. Once the 150,000 Western Army, led by Shi Dakai, arrived at Tianjin City, together with the 50,000 garrisons in Tianjin City and the local garrisons that had arrived one after another, the siege of Tianjin City would be easily resolved. Perhaps the Heavenly Kingdom could even defeat the Shanghai City army one by one. It had to be said that Hong Xiuquan's arrangements were basically flawless. The only flaw was that he had underestimated Shanghai City, as well as Shanghai City's powerful think tank and valiant famous generals. It was this flaw that had dragged the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom into hell. On this very night, the Western army that Hong Xiuquan had been waiting for with all his heart could no longer arrive. Ouyang Shua had long since given up on the scale of the cannons in Tianjin City. He had completely given up on attacking Tianjin City. The only way to deal with such a strong city was to outsmart it. Thus, as soon as the Western Army had begun to withdraw, a huge conspiracy had already enveloped the skies above Xuanzhou County. Just as the Western Army was about to reach Tianjin City, the final step of the plan was already in place. That night, 40 kilometers away from Tianjin City, there was a hillside that stretched for dozens of kilometers. The Western Army, led by Shi Dakai, was camped out here. After resting for a night, the army would arrive at Tianjin City the next day. At this point, Shi Dakai should have breathed a sigh of relief. But for some reason, Shi Dakai felt a sense of unease in his heart. In the night, the sky was filled with stars, scattered like stars on a chessboard. The Milky Way also hung in the sky, a rare sight. The bright moon hung high in the sky, enveloping the vast campsite in a hazy moonlight, making it seem both real and illusory. After patrolling the campsite one last time and seeing that everything was normal, Shirdakai suppressed the unease in his heart and returned to his tent, preparing to rest. After tomorrow, a bitter battle awaited them. At this time, Shirdakai had to conserve his energy. To tell the truth, Yang Xiuqing's house arrest cast a shadow over Shirdakai's heart. Heavenly State seemed calm and peaceful, but the internal strife was becoming more and more intense. The heroic warriors who had appeared in the wilderness seemed to have slowly changed with the successive victories. During the Western expedition, Shirdakai had actually interacted with many players. In fact, he had even taken in player lords in his army. From them, Shirdakai had learned about the historical events of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. After listening to them, he felt a myriad of emotions. Could it be that the tragedy of history was about to repeat itself? Shirdakai shook his head, trying hard to shake off the distracting thoughts in his heart and prepare to rest. Just as Shirdakai was about to fall asleep, the rumbling of horse hooves suddenly rang out in the silent night. It was deafening, causing one's heart to flutter. What followed was a deafening roar of killing. Startled, Shirdakai quickly got up and walked out of the tent. Because of the unease in his heart, Shirdakai didn't even take off his armor when he fell asleep. What happened? Shirdakai grabbed a guard and asked anxiously, General, look." The personal guard outside the tent was also bewildered at this moment. He stuttered as he pointed shakily at the entrance of the tent. His eyes were filled with incomparable shock and endless fear. Hearing this, Shirdakai's heart sank. Looking up, he saw that outside the tent, a dense army had suddenly appeared. There were cavalry and infantry. Before the army arrived, a sky full of arrows was already raining down on the camp. Apart from that, there was also a string of fire arrows piercing through the air. The entire campsite began to burn with raging flames, illuminating the clear night sky even more brightly. Based on Shirdakai's experience, the army that had appeared now was no less than 100,000. Behind the vast army of cavalry, there were groups of black figures advancing toward the camp. It was obvious that this was a meticulously planned plot. Given Shirdakai's cautiousness, he would never have guessed that the real ambush was not at the back, but at the front, where everything seemed calm and uneventful. After all, according to the intelligence sent to him by the heavenly kings, the front of the army should be peaceful. Logically speaking, the three armies of Shanghai City should still be a distance away from Tianjin City. In reality, when Hong Xiuquan had withdrawn the garrison in the south, the armies of Shanghai City on the east and west were practically empty shells. The real main force had first quietly retreated to avoid the eyes and ears of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Then, they had secretly assembled in the rear and moved west, lying in ambush along the route that the Western Army had to pass through. At the same time, the Imperial Guard who had suddenly disappeared also appeared. The two armies and the Imperial Guard made up a total of 140,000 soldiers. Together, they ambushed the Western Army. Ouyang Shua's strategy was to destroy Shirdakai's army outside Tianjin City. In this way, even if the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was truly at the end of the road, they could only defend an empty city and surrender obediently. Give the enemy the most fatal blow at the most impossible time. Wasn't this the way Shanghai City had always done things? To be continued. Chapter 5:24. P.S. As promised, this chapter is to congratulate Ji Yinghu for his promotion to the position of sect leader. I apologize and thank you for being late. The night was as cold as water. The autumn wind blew, bringing with it waves of coldness. At this time, the campsite of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's Western Army was ablaze, and it was as bright as day. Flames soared into the sky, lighting up the night sky of the wilderness. At this moment, the boundless silent wilderness seemed to have awakened ahead of time because of these balls of fire. When the army of Shanghai City attacked, most of the soldiers of the Western Army had fallen asleep after a day's journey. Except for the patrolling soldiers, it was an undefended campsite. It was as if even the heavens were helping Shanghai City. The bright moonlight and the brilliant starlight intertwined, illuminating the entire campsite as if it were daytime. Perhaps this was the manifestation of fate which affected the movement of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Since defeating Chiyo's army, Ouyang Shua's fate had completely taken shape in the southwest area, and no one could rival it. As the saying went, the son of fate would be protected by God. Taking advantage of the bright night, the fierce Shanghai City army started a monstrous massacre in the campsite. At the same time, the two cavalry divisions following the Western Army finally completed their bait mission. They turned out in full strength and rushed toward the campsite of the Western Army. Faced with the attack of the two armies, it was only a matter of time before the Western Army was defeated. Dakai looked at the chaotic camp, and for the first time, a feeling called despair flashed through his heart. The kingdom of heaven was doomed. The iron-blooded man looked up at the sky and sighed. He didn't want to give up, so he tried his best to organize the army and break out of the encirclement. As long as they successfully broke out of the encirclement in the direction of Tianjing City, they still had a chance of survival. Unfortunately, all of this was destined to be in vain. The army of Shanghai City was guarded by two divine generals, Bai Qi and Han Xian. Once they launched a surprise attack, they wouldn't give the Taiping army any time to breathe. Every battle line of the army was impenetrable. The various armies of Shanghai City cooperated with each other, advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. They launched continuous attacks, efficiently and quickly slaughtering the ignorant Taiping army. In every direction, in every corner, there was an army stationed. The camp of the Western Army was like a cage, trapping the army and preventing them from escaping. The battle cries reverberated in all directions and lingered for a long time. By the time Luo Shixin's and Zhang Liao's divisions arrived, the situation had basically been settled. Two elite cavalry divisions, borrowing the light of the fire, galloped unhindered through the camp. Unexpectedly, there was no one who could match them. Zhang Liao was in high spirits as he led his troops to kill the enemy. Just a few days ago, the army in front of them had pressured them to the point of suffocation. Unexpectedly, in just a few days, the roles of the two sides had completely changed. It was the Taiping army's turn to be slaughtered. Such a huge disparity was truly unbelievable. Zhang Liao could not help but sigh in his heart. In comparison, the army of Shanghai City was indeed extraordinary. The soldiers of the Taiping army had thought of escaping into the wilderness at night. Unfortunately, how could Han Xian allow them to succeed? Outside the camp, the two armies had arranged tens of thousands of archers to stand guard. Any soldier who dared to escape would be shot into a sieve before he could go far. In the face of such a rain of arrows, no matter how brave the soldiers were, they would stop at the sight of it. The only way to survive was to surrender. In the sky, full of fire, finally, some soldiers could not stand it anymore and chose to surrender in humiliation. The soldiers knew very well that their army was the only hope of the heavenly kingdom. Now that their hope had been shattered and they could not even protect themselves, even if they were lucky enough to escape, they would not be able to escape the subsequent pursuit. The warship of the heavenly kingdom was already dilapidated and riddled with holes. It was about to sink completely. Instead of dying with the heavenly kingdom, it was better to take the opportunity to board a new warship. With this thought in mind, more and more soldiers surrendered as time went on. Like dominoes, the Taiping army surrendered in batches. In a later stage, if a general came forward to stop them, he would probably be immediately hacked to death by his own people. Seeing such a scene, even the most inflexible general did not dare to pretend to be someone who did not know what was good for him anymore. It was not until late at night that the inconspicuous hillside gradually calmed down. All the surrendered soldiers had their weapons taken away and were gathered together to be detained. The camp from before was instantly turned to one side, becoming a temporary prison cell. In just one night, the world had changed dramatically. The night was getting darker and darker. Even the starlight began to dim. The bustling wilderness regained its original silence. Of course, as long as they got through this dark night, dawn would not be far away. For the whole night, no one in the camp rested. The army of Shanghai City had to guard the prisoners of war, so they did not dare to sleep. As for the soldiers of the Taiping army, they could not calm down and could not sleep at all. More than 200,000 soldiers spent the most difficult 4 hours together in the endless night. At about 6 o'clock in the morning sun finally rose from the eastern sky again. With the red morning sun, the night completely dissipated. The night receded at a speed visible to the naked eye like a tide. Dawn finally came to the world again. It was not until then that Bai Qi and Han Xin had time to do the post-war statistics. And this calculation went on until noon. To be able to achieve such an efficient speed, it was all thanks to the professional staff officers in the army. In the end, even Bai Qi was shocked by the final statistics. In this battle, more than 40,000 of the 150,000 Taiping West Army soldiers died in battle, and more than 90,000 were captured. In the end, less than 20,000 soldiers broke through the siege. Among the 4 main generals of the West Army, General Shi Dakai was sent away by his personal guards during the chaos. General Li Kaifeng of the right died in battle. Deputy General Xiao Gui and General Feng Yinshan of the left were unfortunately captured. Because it was a night battle, the army of Shanghai City also suffered some losses, but they were not seriously injured. After dawn, Zhang Liao rested for a while and then left with his troops. Since the West Army had been defeated, the destruction of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was close at hand. They no longer needed their help. After all, Kunming County had just been pacified, and the army was still in the process of reorganization. As the newly appointed commander of the army, Zhang Liao naturally wanted to return as soon as possible. Fortunately, they were all soldiers, and they were in the army camp, so there was no need to be polite. After some small talk, the two sides said goodbye. Through this period of mutual help, the relationship between Shanghai City and Lingxi City became closer. Not only between the generals, but also between the soldiers began to recognize each other. The cavalry division, led by Luo Shixin, naturally officially returned to the army. Considering that the 2nd Division had been fighting continuously, the soldiers were already exhausted. Bai Qi finally decided that Luo Shixin's division would lead the troops to escort more than 90,000 prisoners of war to Mulan Fortress. Because it was still within the territory of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Bai Qi also arranged for the 5th Division to accompany them to prevent accidents. Luo Shixin was naturally unhappy to receive the order. He had wanted to go to Tianjin City to see for himself. Now it seemed that there was no such opportunity. However, military orders could not be disobeyed, so Luo Shixin could only nod in agreement. The remaining 3 divisions of the Dragonxiang Army would join hands with the Leopard Army and officially set off for Tianjin City. Thus, the war that had lasted for more than a month was finally coming to an end. In the afternoon of November 16th, Tianjin City. When Shi Dakai led the remnants of his troops and fled to Tianjin City in a sorry state, one could imagine the shock it caused. The news of the defeat of the West Road Army was like a tsunami that shook the entire Tianjin City to pieces. Despair spread throughout the battlefield. Panic was like a virus, spreading like lightning. The pessimistic mood instantly enveloped the sky above Tianjin City. It was reported that when the commander of the West Road Army, Shi Dakai, entered the palace to pay his respects to the Heavenly King, he wanted to commit suicide on the spot. If the guards in the main hall had not been a step faster, Shi Dakai would probably have died on the spot. Seeing this, how could Hong Xiuquan bear to reprimand this general? Especially with the defeat of the West Road Army, the originally bright Taiping Army had become dim. If Shi Dakai died as well, they would really be in a situation where they would not have any generals to use. Moreover, Hong Xiuquan was very clear that he had to bear part of the responsibility for the defeat of the West Road Army. To think that Hong Xiuquan had claimed to know the heavenly state like the back of his hand. He did not expect that Shanghai City would play a trick on him right under his nose. The humiliation was not something that outsiders could understand. The two of them secretly discussed for a full 2 hours. Outsiders had no way of knowing what exactly they talked about. They only knew that after Shur-Dakai left the Heavenly King Palace, he did not even return home. Instead, he went straight back to the army camp to reorganize the army, pack up their luggage, and gather supplies. Those with a keen sense of smell would probably be able to guess that the Heavenly King was going to abandon the city and flee. Indeed, in the face of such a great defeat, Hong Xiuquan no longer had the confidence to defend Tianjing. If that was the case, it would be better for him to cut his losses and abandon the city as soon as possible. The direction in which he fled was naturally Guilin County in the north. Of the 3 counties of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, Xuanzhou County had already fallen by more than half. Zhenan County in the west, because it was close to Kunming County in Yunnan Province, was no longer safe. The only choice was to retreat to Guilin County. Although Ouyang Shuo had already led his troops to take down 2 passes, Hong Xiuquan had after all managed Xuanzhou County for nearly a year. He still had a way to break through the blockade of Shanghai City's army. Moreover, with the nearly 20,000 remnants of Shur-Dakai's troops, Hong Xiuquan could mobilize more than 100,000 soldiers. This was also a military force that could not be underestimated. Even if they forcibly attacked the passes, they still had some chance of success. Shur-Dakai's unusual actions immediately caused an even greater uproar in Tianjing. In an instant, rumors spread throughout the city, and it looked like the city was about to go completely out of control. Helpless, Hong Xiuquan could only impose a curfew and mobilize the army to enforce military control. To be continued. Chapter 525. November 16th, night, Tianjing City. As a large number of troops walked onto the streets, the noisy Tianjing City instantly quietened down. Although the city was no longer noisy, the fear in the hearts of the commoners was even greater. In a chaotic world, the weak were always the most helpless and would always be in a dominant position. East of the city, Yang Xiuqing's mansion. Within the huge whirlpool, Yang Xiuqing, who was under house arrest, seemed to be uninvolved, but in reality, that was not the case. There were 2 big whirlpools in Tianjing City. Yang Xiuqing was at the center of one of the whirlpools. Although he was under house arrest, many people in Tianjing City had placed their chips on Yang Xiuqing. In addition to Yang Xiuqing's huge influence in the heavenly state, there were also the contributions of the Military Intelligence Department and the Black Snake Guards, the 2 major intelligence organizations. After working hard in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom for nearly a year and receiving abundant financial support, both Cobra, the director of the Military Intelligence Bureau, and Black Snake, the commander of the Black Snake Guards, had invested a small part of their energy in this area. Many of the civil and military officials in the city kept in touch with them. Of course, regardless of whether it was the military intelligence or the Black Snake Guard, they all used their identities as great merchants when dealing with them. Now, it was time to reap the harvest. Previously, when the Dragon Soaring Legion and Leopard Legion were able to silently avoid Hong Xiuquan's eyes, they had played a part in it. This big show in Tianjing City was the end-of-year test for the 2 intelligence agencies. General, I've just received top-secret information. The Heavenly King will eliminate you before he leaves Tianjing tomorrow. The one who spoke was a soldier from a military intelligence department who had been hiding beside Yang Xiuqing. Yang Xiuqing, who was sitting opposite him, was still expressionless, but a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes. Tempestuous waves had actually arisen in his heart. On one hand, he was terrified of Hong Xiuquan's ruthlessness, and in the end, Hong Xiuquan was still unwilling to let him live. Secondly, he was fearful of the intelligence of the Jun family's intelligence bureau. To be able to obtain news of the Sky Emperor Palace in time, just this alone was enough to make Yang Xiuqing look at him in a different light. One had to know that Hong Xiuquan's guard against the Sky Emperor Palace had almost reached an extreme level. Even a general like Yang Xiuqing didn't know much about the affairs of the palace. Once the palace maids, eunuchs, and other internal affairs personnel were found to have colluded with external officials, they would immediately be put to death. Even so, they were still unable to stop the infiltration of Shanghai City. "General, it's time to end this." Seeing that Yang Xiuqing was still a little hesitant, the soldier had no choice but to emphasize his tone. Once Hong Xiuquan left Tianjing City, they would not be able to answer to the Marquis. Therefore, no matter what, they had to act tonight and do their best to prevent the evacuation tomorrow. Silence, deathly silence. At this moment, even the air seemed to freeze. Only the people involved knew what kind of stormy waves and bloody storms would be stirred up by the so-called ending. Once this step was taken, there was no turning back. After a long while, Yang Xiuqing nodded and said in a deep voice, "Since he is heartless, then don't blame me for being unjust." After saying these words, all the hesitation and apprehension in his heart vanished like smoke in thin air. Yang Xiuqing knew very well that ever since he agreed to the conditions of the person in front of him that night, he no longer had a way out. The distance between him and the kingdom of heaven was already getting further and further, and there was no turning back. Betrayal was never an easy thing to do in this regime that was founded on religious sections. Because once he betrayed, he would not only betray the heavenly king Hong Xiuquan, but also his previous beliefs. The feeling of his beliefs collapsing was even worse than the feeling of being stabbed by a blade or stick. "Fine, let all this pain end tonight." Hong Xiuquan slowly closed his eyes, unwilling to say another word. Seeing this, the soldier did not say anything, stood up, and left. Next, it was their turn to go on stage. In the city, the Emperor Palace. The majestic Emperor Palace stood in the center of Tianjing City, stretching for dozens of li. There were thousands of pavilions and tens of thousands of palaces, and it was filled with endless wealth and beauty, giving it the air of a heavenly family. Compared to Ouyang Shua's protectorate of the southern border, which had been expanded several times, it was probably even better. On normal days, the Sky Emperor Palace was completely silent at night. The thousands of palace maids, eunuchs, and guards in the palace did not dare to make the slightest noise. Tonight was clearly different. According to the heavenly king's orders, the palace was bustling and noisy. The palace maids and eunuchs were busy packing up the valuables in the palace and sending them to the carriages. Just the personal belongings of the heavenly king alone were packed into 10 large carriages. In addition, there were the personal belongings of the concubines, antiques, paintings, gold, silver, jewelry, porcelain, silk, and all kinds of ornaments. The hundreds of carriages were about to be loaded up. It was already late at night, and the light shone on the Emperor Palace, giving off an indescribable sense of irony. Hong Xiuquan, who was mentally and physically exhausted, dragged his weary body and slowly walked into the bedchamber. Hong Xiuquan's previous high spirits were instantly pulled away from his body, becoming empty. The empire's hegemony was gone in an instant. In the span of a night, Hong Xiuquan seemed to have aged more than 10 years. Wrinkles appeared on his forehead, and even his hair was beginning to turn white. This was the feeling of a dead man's heart. Hong Xiuquan knew that even if he retreated to Guilin County, he would only be able to live in peace for a while. In the vast wilderness, there was no longer a place or stage for him. For Hong Xiuquan, who had been reborn, the blow was too great. It was so great that he could not bear it. As the saying goes, the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. Hong Xiuquan's current mood was the best portrayal of falling from the sky. Only because of this, he hated Yang Xiuqing to the bone. Even if he had to retreat, he was not willing to let Yang Xiuqing live in peace. He had to get rid of her, because in Hong Xiuquan's understanding, it was the defeat of the Southern Army that triggered the chain reaction in Heavenly State. He had never reflected on what would have happened in Heavenly State if he had listened to Yang Xiuqing's suggestion and retreated from the Milan fortress. At the very least, he would not have ended up in such a state. In the end, Hong Xiuquan still had a knot in his heart. The debt of sin from his previous life still haunted him in this life, making him unable to feel at ease. From time to time, Hong Xiuquan would worry that when he woke up one night, Heavenly State would change dramatically. Yang Xiuqing would lead hundreds of thousands of troops and suddenly turn the spear to kill him in the palace and replace him. To be honest, being able to tolerate Yang Xiuqing's command until now was the result of Hong Xiuquan repeatedly overcoming his inner demons. With such a breadth of mind, how could he be qualified to lead a regime and stand in the wilderness? With such a heavenly king, the defeat of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was only a matter of time. When Hong Xiuquan walked into the bedroom, he found that it was not concubine Xiao who was serving him tonight, but concubine Shun who should not be here. Not only did he frown, but his face was already filled with anger. After appearing in the wilderness, Hong Xiuquan married 10 concubines. Hong Xiuquan did not completely forget his character in his previous life. He specially made a schedule, and every day there would be a fixed concubine waiting for him to go to bed. Therefore, Hong Xiuquan had a clear idea of who was serving him every day. "Why is it you? Where is concubine Xiao?" Hong Xiuquan stared at the delicate concubine Shun. There was not a trace of warmth in his eyes, but an indescribable coldness. In his eyes, the role of women was nothing more than reproduction and a tool to satisfy his lust. Even to his concubines, Hong Xiuquan did not really treat them as human beings. Although they were called concubines, in fact, their status was not much different from that of palace maids. As an ancient scholar, although Hong Xiuquan failed many times and later founded the god-worshipping society according to the teachings of the West, he still inherited the stubbornness and bad habits of pedantic scholars. Concubine Qin did not dare to show a trace of disrespect and carefully replied, reporting to the heavenly king, "Concubine Xiao fell ill during the day, and the empress arranged for me to serve the heavenly king. Is that so?" Hearing this, Hong Xiuquan's expression slightly relaxed. Even so, he still arranged for someone to go to concubine Zhao's place to confirm. Hong Xiuquan was not worried about anything else, but he could not tolerate the concubines in the harem playing tricks to gain extra favor from him. In fact, he did not have to do this. Which concubine was not trembling with fear when it was their turn to serve the heavenly king? How could they have the mood to play tricks and compete for favor with each other? Hong Xiuquan was really interesting. Even if he was reborn, he still unconsciously thought that he was the center of the people. He was the god of the people, the heaven of the concubines, and the ruler of the fate of all mortals. Rest. In such a situation, Hong Xiuquan naturally did not have any interest. After asking concubine Shan to help him change his clothes, he prepared to go to sleep. Yes, concubine Qin's worried heart finally relaxed. After a while, the candlelight faded and the heavenly king's bedroom fell into darkness. The surroundings of the entire palace fell into absolute silence when they saw this. Even the palace maids and eunuchs who were still sorting out items had to take a detour. Concubine Shun, who was sleeping next to Hong Xiuquan, did not fall asleep, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. This woman, in addition to her identity as a concubine, had another secret identity. She was the highest-level secret agent that the Black Snake Guards had placed beside Hong Xiuquan. She was also the top existence among the Snake Guards. Among the Snake Guards, there was a special type of secret agent called the Death Guard. Every Death Guard was only responsible for one mission in their life. This was because the missions they were responsible for were all very dangerous, and once they were completed, they would basically die. If they were lucky enough to survive, the Black Snake Guards would also arrange for them to retire and live a comfortable life. In order to let concubine Shan be chosen by Hong Xiuquan without a trace and be accepted into the palace, the Black Snake Guards had put in a lot of effort. It could be said that concubine Shun, this chess piece, was the core existence that the Black Snake Guards had placed in Tianjing City. After several times, several Snake Guards had been replaced, and they finally succeeded when it was concubine Shen's turn. It was also because of this that the Black Snake Guards had the confidence to set off huge waves in Tianjing City. To be continued. Chapter 5:26. Of course, The Black Snake Guard's arrangements in the Emperor Palace were naturally not limited to Chun Fei alone, because no one could guarantee when they would need to use Chun Fei as their trump card. The only method was to ensure that once the time was ripe, no matter who it was that night, the Black Snake Guards would have a way to make the person who served them become Chun Fei and achieve their goal. The operations involved were enough to dazzle one's eyes. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. Chun Fei's eyes became brighter and brighter, with a hint of death in them. She gently put her right hand into her mouth and slightly tilted it, revealing a white tooth. Upon closer inspection, the tooth turned out to be a fake tooth. It was hollow inside with a tiny wax pellet hidden inside. The bean-sized wax pellet was naturally formed, and there was not a single crack on its surface. In order to avoid the strict search in the palace, the Black Snake Guards had put in a lot of effort. Chun Fei carefully took out the wax pill and squeezed it hard. The wax pill immediately burst. Suddenly, a thin wisp of green smoke floated out of the wax ball. Wisps of green smoke were immediately sucked into Chun Fei and Hong Xiuquan's body. This green smoke was the world's strange poison that the mountain barbarians had offered to Ouyang Shua. It was called smoky miasma, and it was extremely rare. Only in the depths of the mountains and forests, where miasma filled the air, and beside the deep ponds and ancient trees, could one find a trace of it. Then, he used a secret technique to seal it with a natural wax pellet. When poisoning someone, there was no need to use any medium. One only needed to pinch open the wax pellet. If an ordinary person breathed in a trace of the smoky net barrier, they would definitely be poisoned to death in less than an hour. Thus, even if it was the mountain barbarians, if they wanted to gather a trace of smoky barrier, they often had to pay an extremely great sacrifice. Basically, there were very few people who survived. However, such a strange poison, once it was produced, if it wasn't collected within 10 minutes, it would merge back into the pool and disappear. Thus, if one wanted to gather a smoky barrier, luck and sacrifice were both indispensable. Such harsh conditions were also part of the natural order. Otherwise, if a large number of smoky barriers were to emerge into the world, then wouldn't it cause all living beings to be plunged into misery and suffering? After all, the strength of the smoky barrier lay in its poisonous gas. It was soundless and could kill people without leaving a trace. It wasn't like arsenic, helianthus, and other poisons that required blood and other mediums to be effective. In ancient times, there were no gas masks. Therefore, the person who poisoned it could be poisoned to death if he was not careful. Chun Fei had never expected to walk out of the Emperor Palace alive. The poignant smoky net miasma drifted over, and the two of them were immediately poisoned. As for Hong Xiuquan, he was still sleeping soundly, completely unaware of this. Perhaps, to Hong Xiuquan, this kind of death was already a blessing. The only one who suffered was Chun Fei. After inhaling the smoky miasma, Chun Fei could only close her eyes and wait for death. The most beautiful flowers always wither in the most beautiful years. The next morning, that day, when the palace maids entered the Heavenly King's bedroom to help the Heavenly King and consort Chun wash up, they saw the two corpses lying on the ground. Smoky mist. Its name was beautiful, and so was its effect. Those who were poisoned did not show any abnormalities on their bodies. It was as if they were in eternal slumber. In an instant, the news of the Heavenly King's sudden death spread throughout Tianjing City. In an instant, the entire city was shaken. The civil and military officials who had stayed up all night to pack their luggage and prepare to leave Tianjing City with the Heavenly King were all stunned when they heard the news. A sudden storm engulfed the entire Tianjing City. Everyone was at a loss as to where the fate of Heavenly State would lead. 9 in the morning, the Emperor Palace's main hall. No matter what, since it had already happened, the civil and military officials naturally had to discuss how to solve it. Because the Empress of Heavenly State was basically a decoration. Therefore, the ones who truly held the real power were the civil and military officials in the hall. It was them who would decide the future of Heavenly State. The military officials were naturally led by Shi Dakai. The head of the civil officials was a historical talent. This person was Su Jia. Su Zhe, courtesy name Zio, was a northern songwriter, poet, and deputy prime minister. He was one of the 8 great scholars of Tang and song. Along with his father Su Sun and brother Su Shi, they were known as the Three Sus. Hong Xiuquan appeared in the wilderness. Apart from Yang Xiuqing, he did not have any qualified internal affairs talent. But Hong Xiuquan did not dare let Yang Xiuqing interfere in government affairs. The only way was to put outsiders in important positions. And Su Zhe was the talent that Hong Xiuquan had subdued when he was destroying the territories of other players. Apart from Su Zhe, there were 2 other historical officials in Heavenly State. However, they were not well known and were not mentioned. Logically speaking, when the Heavenly King suddenly died, the first thing to do was to decide on a successor. However, Hong Xiuquan had appeared in the wilderness for less than a year, so he did not leave behind any heirs. Moreover, Heavenly State was in a precarious situation. Even if there were children, they would not be able to take on such a great responsibility. Therefore, the official's opinion was naturally to choose someone from among the old officials, especially those who had appeared with the Heavenly King in the wilderness, to take over the Heavenly King's position and continue his unfinished business. And the most important thing now was naturally to lead everyone out of the crisis of destruction. The first person to be recommended was, unsurprisingly, Shi Dakai. Shi Dakai was a senior elder of Heavenly State and a military official who held military power. In these troubled times, he was naturally the most powerful competitor. And last night, the Heavenly King had summoned Shi Dakai alone. It was clear that he was being given preferential treatment. Logically speaking, there was indeed no one who could compete with Shi Dakai. As for Shi Dakai himself, because of yesterday's great defeat, his mind was unsettled and he did not say a word in court. Shi Dakai's silence was naturally interpreted by others as tacit agreement. At this moment, a tall and thin official stepped out from the crowd and said loudly, "General Shi is naturally one of the suitable candidates, but I believe there is someone more suitable than General Shi." What a joke. Is there anyone more experienced than General Shi in Heavenly State? Shi Dakai's supporters immediately retorted, their expressions arrogant. Of course there is. The official said unhurriedly, "General Yang Xiuqing, whether in terms of experience or ability, I'm afraid she is superior to General Shi." Needless to say, this official was naturally the backbone of Yang Xiuqing's camp. Last night, after Yang Xiuqing had sent off the soldiers of the Military Intelligence Department, she had begun contacting the officials to discuss the coup. Originally, these allies had still held some doubts. After all, Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan's prestige was still extremely high. Not many people had the confidence to challenge the authority of the Heavenly King. But this morning, news of the Heavenly King's sudden death had suddenly spread throughout the city. When these allies received the news, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. If there was no connection between the two, they wouldn't believe it even if you beat them to death. In that instant, they made their own decisions. At this time, they naturally had to wave the flag and cheer for Yang Xiuqing in court. Ha, what a joke. The one who retorted was still the same official from before. He said with a sneer, "A defeated general, and someone imprisoned by the Heavenly King at that. What right does he have to inherit the throne? Is that so?" The tall and thin official's words were filled with an indescribable meaning. He said, faintly, "If I remember correctly, General Shi is also a defeated general. And once he was defeated, he buried the fate of Heavenly State." The entire hall suddenly fell silent. Shi Dakai's expression suddenly became incomparably ashamed. A wave of shame spread through his entire body. If it weren't for the person next to him holding him back, he would have turned and left. How can this be the same? Shi Dakai's supporters were also speechless. Even they themselves didn't have the confidence to say what they had just heard. How is it different? The tall and thin official, on the other hand, followed up with another attack. He said loudly, "General Yang was ordered to attack Fort Milan, and it was a tough battle. Moreover, General Yang had proposed to withdraw the army, but he didn't receive the approval of the Heavenly King. But General Shur, commanding 150,000 troops, was actually ambushed by the enemy at his doorstep. Isn't that even more ridiculous? As soon as he finished speaking, more and more officials looked at Shur Dakai with inquisitive expressions. Hey, no matter what, the Heavenly King put Yang Xiuqing under house arrest, but treated General Shur differently. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? Isn't it obvious who has what position in the Heavenly King's heart? What house arrest? It's just the Heavenly King being forced by public opinion to protect General Yang in disguise. Deceiving yourself. Shameless. The officials all had a deep understanding of the art of language. As the debate unfolded, more and more people were involved in this quarrel. In the Great Hall, the debate continued. The supporters of Yang Xiuqing and Shur Dakai were arguing, and no one could convince the other. In this debate, Su Zhe and the other officials were a group of complete bystanders. Su Zhe was very clear in his heart that these outsiders had no right to decide the fate of Heavenly Kingdom. At this moment, the ones who truly had the right to decide were these generals. Seeing this, Shur Dakai couldn't hold it in any longer and walked out with a flick of his sleeve. At this time, a leisurely voice suddenly came from outside the Great Hall. Brother Shur. Hearing this, Shur Dakai stopped in his tracks and raised his head to look outside. The one who had come was the imprisoned Yang Xiuqing. As soon as Yang Xiuqing appeared, he caused a great uproar in the court. His supporters were naturally overjoyed, while Shur Dakai's supporters were livid. Yang Xiuqing, how dare you? The Heavenly King has decreed that you are not to be summoned or to leave the residence. Now that the Heavenly King's corpse has yet to turn cold, you dare defy the decree? What are your intentions? The one who had rebuked Yang Xiuqing was the vanguard of Shur Dakai's camp. Hearing this, a cold light flashed through Yang Xiuqing's eyes, but a warm smile still hung on her face. She said lightly, "The Heavenly King has passed away. As a subject, isn't it right to come to the palace to pay respects?" You. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing shook her head and turned to Shur Dakai. Brother, can I have a word with you? Shur Dakai gazed at Yang Xiuqing and finally nodded. To be continued. Chapter 5:27. In a side courtyard on the west side of the Emperor Palace, Yang Xiuqing and Shur Dakai sat facing each other. This side courtyard was usually where the ministers of Heavenly State worked. But now it was quiet. Other than Shur and Yang, there was no one else around. The sudden death of the Heavenly King had put the entire Emperor Palace in a state of panic. The palace maids and eunuchs stared at the prepared luggage, not knowing what to do. If it wasn't for the presence of these two people, the entire Tianjing city would have been in chaos. Hearing the news of the Heavenly King's sudden death, Shur Dakai had immediately arranged for the army to take to the streets and enforce control over Tianjing city to stop any disturbances. Logically speaking, Shur Dakai, who held the military power, could easily seize power and take over. Unfortunately, with Shur Dakai's personality, he would not do such a thing. In reality, Shur Dakai had no intention of inheriting Hong Xiuquan's career. In Shur Dakai's eyes, the Heavenly State's cause was just a dream. Now that he had woken up from the dream, Shur Dakai was even more lost. It was as if he had suddenly lost his direction and goal in life. Brother, do you know about the historical Heavenly State? Yang Xiuqing picked up the teacup, took a sip, and asked calmly. That's right. Then in your opinion, can the career of Heavenly State be realized in this chaotic world? Shur Dakai was speechless. Even Heavenly King Hong Xiuquan would not believe it. In this chaotic world, only a hero can wield a sharp sword, cut through all obstacles, and wage war in all directions to create a truly peaceful world for the millions and millions of living beings. A trace of excitement flashed through Yang Xiuqing's eyes as she said that. Mighty Lord, Shur Dakai's eyes narrowed, and his expression changed for the first time. Is that you? No. Yang Xiuqing shook her head and smiled bitterly. I don't think I have that ability. Then who is it? Shur Dakai did not understand. He had thought that Yang Xiuqing had called him over to persuade him to withdraw from the competition. Let me ask, Who else in the southwest region is more suitable than that person? Yang Xiuqing smiled and slowly revealed her trump card. It's him? Dakai was so shocked that he almost slammed the table. That's right, it's him. Yang Xiuqing stared into Dakai's eyes and said firmly, I didn't expect this. I really didn't expect this. Yang Xiuqing had mixed feelings when she heard that. He was well aware of the meaning behind Dakai's words. So, you've harbored disloyalty since a long time ago? Dakai restrained his emotions, his eyes suddenly becoming incomparably sharp. Suddenly, a surge of murderous intent burst forth from Dakai's body, making it impossible for others to look at him directly. This was a ferocious tiger that was usually docile. Only in times of crisis would it reveal its ferocious claws and teeth. Even someone as experienced as Yang Xiuqing couldn't help but feel astonished. Dakai was a valiant general of the present age. He truly lived up to his reputation. Yang Xiuqing was very clear that if he didn't give a good answer, he would be killed. Fortunately, Yang Xiuqing was not an easy person to deal with. The teacup in her hand did not move at all. No, Yang Xiuqing shook her head and said miserably, when the army was defeated, the other party did come into contact with me. But at that time, I didn't make up my mind. It was only when the Heavenly King wanted to get rid of me that I had no choice but to do so. Yang Xiuqing's words were half-truths, and Dakai couldn't find a single flaw in them. Recalling the secret conversation with the Heavenly King yesterday afternoon, Dakai let out a long sigh. Fate makes fools of people. At this point in the heavenly state, it was impossible to say who was in the right and who was in the wrong. So, the Heavenly King's sudden death has something to do with you? The murderous intent in Dakai's eyes did not diminish as he asked the most crucial question. When the Heavenly King was found dead, the forensic doctor immediately rushed to the scene to examine the body. After some investigation, he only knew that the Heavenly King and Chun Fei had died of an unknown poison. As for anything else, he knew nothing. In the last moments of her life, Chun Fei had placed the wax pellet back into the cavity of the fake teeth and put the teeth back in place. The only trace left was naturally gone. Therefore, the only conclusion was that the Heavenly King had been assassinated. However, according to the Heavenly King Palace Guard, there were no traces of anyone suspicious that night. The entire case had become an unsolved mystery. Of course, there were also those who suspected that the guard had purposely shirked responsibility in order to avoid punishment. No matter what, it would be impossible to find out the truth in a short period of time. And with the perilous situation in the heavenly state, who would have the mind to pay attention to the truth behind this unsolved mystery? To be honest, Yang Xiuqing was not prepared for the Heavenly King's sudden death. This operation was completely planned by the Black Snake Guards. It wasn't me. Yang Xiuqing did not know how to answer and could only say these 3 words resolutely. Dakai was deep in thought, still unable to calm down. Although Dakai did not have much affection for the Heavenly King, it was impossible to say that he was not touched by the Heavenly King's forgiveness and trust in him yesterday. Therefore, if possible, Dakai naturally wanted to avenge the Heavenly King. Unfortunately, the current him was probably powerless to do anything, because there was a huge shadow looming over the sky of Tianjing City, suffocating everyone. Yang Xiuqing knew where Dakai's weakness was and said faintly, "Brother, for the sake of the people of the heavenly state, please do not do anything stupid." Hearing this, Dakai's expression became more and more complicated. Is it worth it to drag the people of the city to death just to avenge the Heavenly King? Dakai had to face such a choice. Silence. It was a deathly silence. The last 2 pillars of the heavenly state sat facing each other in silence, their emotions fluctuating. Compared to Dakai, Yang Xiuqing was much calmer. He was confident that he had not judged wrongly. Once a person's character was completely seen through by the opponent, he would be defeated before the battle even began. As expected, Dakai gave a long sigh and slowly removed the military seal from his waist. He placed it on the stone table in front of him and said bitterly, "I hope you can let them live." The them Shirdakai was referring to as naturally his supporters. Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing was shocked and waved his hand. "Brother, you don't have to be like this. As long as you and I come to an agreement, it doesn't matter who holds the military power." "No." Shirdakai shook his head. "I am already disheartened and have no intention of participating in the court. Brother, you are in the prime of your life. It is the best time for you to make a name for yourself. Why are you so pathetic?" Seeing this, Yang Xiuqing frowned deeply. There was a hint of anger in his tone. He did this not only because he felt sorry for Sherdakai's self-abandonment, but also because he had a mission at hand. The Marquis behind the scenes had specifically requested that Sherdakai stay. Let's leave it at that. Sherdakai had no intention of defending himself. He stood up and left. "Wait." Yang Xiuqing stood up as well. "May I ask if little brother has a clear destination in mind? In the vast wilderness, where can I not find shelter?" Sherdakai did not turn around. His voice was full of exhaustion. He was really tired and wanted to rest. "Since you have no clear destination, why don't you make a trip to Shanghai City's military lecture hall?" Yang Xiuqing's expression changed. He said sincerely, "You and I are both poor people with shallow foundations. The principal of the military lecture hall is War Sage Sun Wu. Brother, you will definitely gain something from this trip. Not only can you stay away from the disputes of the court, but you can also increase your military knowledge. Why not? It's better than wandering aimlessly in the wilderness, isn't it?" Hearing this, Sherdakai's body paused. He did not say anything and left. Looking at Sherdakai's back, Yang Xiuqing sighed. He had done all he could. Even if the Marquis reprimanded him, he had nothing to say. The chaos in Tianjin City quickly came to an end after the two leaders reached an agreement. Yang Xiuqing held the military seal. With the support of his trusted subordinates, he successfully controlled the army in the city. No matter what, Yang Xiuqing's prestige in the army was still very high. Coupled with the instigation of the Military Intelligence Bureau, everything fell into place. In the court, seeing Yang Xiuqing gain power, the officials who had originally supported Sherdakai were all panicking. Fortunately, Yang Xiuqing kept his promise. He only put them under house arrest and did not kill them. As for Sherdakai, he disappeared. After taking power, Yang Xiuqing did not ascend to the throne as the outside world had guessed. His first order was to announce the official dissolution of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and surrender to Shanghai City. When the news came out, the Heavenly Kingdom was in an uproar. Some loyal followers were dissatisfied with Yang Xiuqing's decision and protested on the streets. Yang Xiuqing's attitude was extremely unyielding. He used iron-blooded methods to forcefully suppress them. He knew very well that since he had decided to surrender to Shanghai City, he could no longer rely on luck. His current most important task was to clear all obstacles for the Marquis to enter Tianjin City. The news of Hong Xiuquan's sudden death, Yang Xiuqing's rise to power, and the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom swept across the southern Sichuan province like a hurricane. For a moment, the world was shaken. The players knew in their hearts that it was only a matter of time before Shanghai City wiped out the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. What shocked them was that it was so fast and so ingenious. The people could not help but sigh. How many trump cards did the Marquis of Lian Province have? At the same time, with the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, a shocking reality was placed in front of all the players in the China region. The Lord of Shanghai City, the Marquis of Lian Province, was not without clothes. He officially occupied a province. More than 90% of the lords had not been promoted to county cities. The vastness of Shanghai City's territory was really unrivaled. Only a king could have such a majestic appearance. The world was shocked. The ruler of a generation had officially revealed his ferocity. In a short period of time, no one in the China region could rival the Marquis of Lian Province. Affected by this, the Shanghai Alliance's reputation soared again, even more than before. The reputation that the Yan-Huang Alliance had painstakingly accumulated fell to the bottom in an instant. The entire southwest region seemed to be shrouded in the shadow of not without clothes. The protectorate of the southern border was becoming more and more worthy of its name. To be continued. Chapter 528. In the southern part of Gillen County, there were mountains that stretched for thousands of miles. In the forest, the trees were lush, ferocious beasts ran amok, bandits ran rampant, and people were rarely seen. There were only a few roads that could travel between the two counties, allowing them to communicate with each other. On the main road that connected Gillen County and Shuanzhou County, there were 2 large passes and more than 10 small passes. These 2 large passes were called Guiping Pass and Xianwu Pass. Among them, Guiping Pass was the most majestic, and it was the main road that connected the 2 counties. At this time, Ouyang Shua was stationed at Guiping Pass. When Yang Xiuqing took control of Tianjin City, the Black Snake Guards immediately sent a secret letter to Ouyang Shua. The victory of Tianjin City shocked Ouyang Shua, and he was full of prey for the 2 intelligence agencies, the Military Intelligence Division and the Black Snake Guards. The intelligence system that he had invested a lot of money into had finally borne sweet fruit. In this battle, Shanghai City was able to take down the seemingly indestructible Tianjin City without losing a single soldier, and the 2 intelligence agencies could take credit for it. Meritorious service naturally had to be rewarded. Unfortunately, the Black Snake Guards were an organization that could not see the light of day, and Ouyang Shua could not reward them. On the other hand, Ouyang Shua had already sent an order to the Military Intelligence Division to give them a 4th-class merit. As for individual rewards, they could be directly evaluated by the Military Intelligence Division. What made Ouyang Shua even happier was that the Black Snake Guards had successfully found the Ming Dynasty Firearm Manufacturing Technical Manual that Ouyang Shua had dreamed of in Hong Xiuquan's bedroom. Originally, Ouyang Shua thought that Hong Xiuquan had only grasped the cannon manufacturing technology, but he did not expect that it was actually the entire set of Ming Dynasty firearm manufacturing technology. How could he not be ecstatic? With such a great weapon, the technological level of Shanghai City would rise to a new level. Yang Xiuqing took control of Tianjin City and immediately sealed the Emperor Palace. The belongings that had been loaded into the carriage were also sealed on the spot, waiting for the Marquis to deal with them. It was precisely because of this that the Black Snake Guards could freely enter and exit the Emperor Palace. They knew all too well what the Marquis wanted the most after going through so much trouble. Ouyang Shua immediately sent a letter to the Black Snake Guards, asking them to immediately send the Ming Dynasty Firearm Manufacturing Technical Manual back to Shanghai City and hand it over to the No. 7 Research Institute. At the same time, the greatest hero of this battle was buried, Death Guard Chun Fei, codenamed Cauliflower Snake. Other than rewarding the Black Snake Guard and the Military Intelligence Division, Ouyang Shua also issued a series of edicts in Guiping Pass, making arrangements for the military and political affairs of the territory after the war. Actually, some things had been brewing in Ouyang Shua's mind since a month ago. He only had to wait for the day of success before he could carry it out smoothly. He ordered the Tiger's Might General Lin Yi to lead the Royal Guard Division and immediately enter Tianjin City to take over the city's defense. Although the army in Tianjin City was already under Yang Xiuqing's control, Ouyang Shua was still worried that there would be chaos within the Taiping army over time. After all, among the 100,000 Taiping army, the number of troops that Yang Xiuqing could really control was probably less than 30,000. The remaining 70,000 soldiers relied on Shi Dakai's command talismans to control the other armies. Coupled with the deterrence of Shanghai City, Tianjin City temporarily calmed down. Thus, only when the Imperial Guard Division represented the territory and entered Tianjin City could the situation be considered to be truly stable and foolproof. Fortunately, the Imperial Guard Regiment was not far from Tianjin City. They would be able to reach there in the morning. With Lin Yi's ability, it was enough to frighten the rascals. He ordered General Bai Qi to lead the 3 divisions of the Dragon Xiang army to immediately stop advancing. Then, he directed the army to Zhun and County in the west to wipe out the remaining local forces. Although the local garrison troops of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had basically been transferred to Tianjing City by Hong Xiuquan, there were still some residual troops in the counties and even some civilian armed forces. Ouyang Shua did not dare to take the territory established by Sex lightly. If he did not arrange for the army to sweep through, how would he dare to arrange for officials to take over the cities? Ouyang Shua did not want to see the officials sent by Shanghai City to be attacked by bandits on the way. In other words, if they rushed to the city, they would be refused entry. If that happened, Shanghai City would lose all its face. At the same time, because Zhenan County was basically a bystander in this war, the local tyrants were basically not affected. Naturally, it would hinder Shanghai City's rule over this area. Therefore, no matter how he looked at it, Ouyang Shua had a reason to arrange for the army to carry out a major sweep. Of course, Ouyang Shua believed that Bai Qi would definitely understand his intentions and would not start any more massacres in Zhenan County. Killing God Bai Qi would only kill those that he thought deserved to be killed. He would not even bother to make a move. At the same time, Ouyang Shua ordered the 2 divisions of the Dragon Xiang army, who were responsible for escorting the prisoners of war of the Western Army, to immediately advance to the west and join up with the main army. The encampment of the Dragon Xiang army would also take this opportunity to move towards the west. The headquarters of the army would be set up at the southwest border of Zhenan and County, facing Kunming County and Mengding County in Yunnan Province. It was not that Ouyang Shua was guarding against Lingxi City, but he was using this opportunity to adjust the battle zones of the various armies after the war. At the same time, it was also the embryonic form of the future war zone. The future Dragon Xiang army would shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting the western border of the territory. At the same time, the Dragon Xiang army would also be the main force to cooperate with Kunming County to attack the other 4 counties in Yunnan Province. The first to bear the brunt would naturally be Mengding County, which was adjacent to Zhenan County. Of course, even if they wanted to start a war, they would have to wait until next year. The territory had annexed 3 counties of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in one go, and it would take some time to digest. However, the early stage of external intelligence investigation work could be started early. After all, after experiencing this war, presumably no general would dare to underestimate the use of intelligence. At the same time, Ouyang Shua ordered Great General Han Xan to lead the Leopard Army to the north, pass through Gui Ping Pass, and attack Guilin County in the north, sweeping up the remaining local forces. Similarly, the encampment of the Leopard Army that Ouyang Shua had envisioned would be set up in the north of Guilin County. The future Leopard Army would shoulder the heavy responsibility of protecting the northern border of the territory. The first to bear the brunt would naturally be the North Sichuan Province and South Hunan Province. Guilin County bordered the 2 provinces, and both sides had a border that stretched for thousands of miles. Therefore, no matter if it was Han Xian or the Leopard Tau Army, being stationed in the northern territory was a heavy responsibility. Of course, Ouyang Shua still trusted Han Xian very much. After experiencing 3 battles, Han Xian's ability to command troops had already been recognized by the officers and soldiers. The name of the immortal soldier spread like wildfire in the army. In this way, the 3 major armies of the territory would each guard a region. The Dragon Elephant Army guarded the west, the Brave Tiger Army guarded the east, and the Leopard Army guarded the north. As for the south of the territory, it was a vast ocean, so naturally, it would be the responsibility of the Navy to guard it. After arranging the military affairs, Ouyang Shua sent a letter to the Shanghai Protectorate Office to arrange the affairs of the territory. He ordered the Chief of Administration, Xiao He, to arrange for the relevant officials to be stationed in the 3 counties and take over the cities one by one. The most important thing was naturally to appoint the 3 county governors. Only by selecting the most important county governor would Ouyang Shua not have to personally attend to the affairs of the counties. After much consideration, Ouyang Shua finally decided that Pei Ju would be the county governor of Guilin County. Although Pei Ju was proficient in military affairs, he was best at handling administrative affairs. Coupled with the decline of the civil officials in the territory, Ouyang Shuo could only reluctantly give up his treasure and send Pei Ju to guard a region for him. Pei Ju himself was quite willing to make this arrangement. Guilin County was located in the northernmost part of Chuanan Province, bordering both Chuanan Province and Xiangnan Province. It could be said to be a land of war. Moreover, Guilin County was the route of retreat that Hongqiu Chuan had previously arranged, so the resistance in the county was bound to be strong. Because it was not easy to govern Guilin County well. At this time, only the famous official Pei Ju could take on this heavy responsibility. As for the county governor of Xuanzhou County, Ouyang Shuo chose the current county governor of Laizhou County, Bao Shuya. As for Yang Xiuqing, who was temporarily in charge of Xuanzhou County, he would be transferred to the county governor of Laizhou County. Of course, before Bao Shuya arrived at Tianjin City, Yang Xiuqing would temporarily manage the affairs. No matter how much he trusted Yang Xiuqing, Ouyang Shuo could not arrange for Yang Xiuqing to hold a post in one of the 3 counties under the rule of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. That was too dangerous, and it might not be a good thing for Yang Xiuqing. As the old saying went, if you don't want to be betrayed by others, don't give them the conditions to betray you. Therefore, the only way was to be transferred to another place. After arriving at Thunder Prefecture, Yang Xiuqing could finally put down the heavy burden in his heart. He could display his strengths and fully display his ambitions. Perhaps a famous official would be born from this. Xuanzhou County was the central county of the South Sichuan Province, and it was also the foundation of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. During the war, it had been swept away by the 3 armies of Shanghai City, and the local power had been greatly damaged. Therefore, among the counties, the position of the county governor of Xuanzhou County could be said to be a cushy job. Ouyang Shuo transferred Bao Shuya to be the county governor of Xuanzhou County, which could be considered as a kind of recognition of his ability to govern Laizhou County. Bao Shuya's task was to stabilize the people's hearts and restore Xuanzhou County's economy as soon as possible. The economic potential of Xuanzhou County was also the strongest among all the counties. As for Zhenan County, Ouyang Shuo chose the current magistrate of Mulan Prefecture, Mulan Yue, as the first lord to draw close to Ouyang Shuo. It was time for Ouyang Shuo to give the little girl the fruits of victory. Mulan Yue was also the only one among the 3 county governors who had been promoted. In the Dragon Xiang army, where Mu Guiying will be stationed in Zhenan County. With this layer of relationship, Ouyang Shuo believed that the communication and coordination between the local military and government would not be a problem. After the army's battle zone was designated, the daily supplies of the army would naturally be the responsibility of the local county. The War Preparedness Division could not transport rations, fodder, and other supplies to the army across thousands of mountains and rivers. This was not realistic, nor was it reasonable. Therefore, in the future, the army would have to deal with the local government. And this was also an area that Shun Buhai, who was in charge of the Shanghai Guards, would focus on monitoring and guarding against. To be continued. Chapter 529. P.S. Updated. Since the establishment of the territory, Ouyang Shuo had implemented a strict separation between the military and the government. Therefore, he would never allow the commanding general and the local officials to take this opportunity to form any relationship that they shouldn't have, or to breed any chain of interest that shouldn't exist. However, Mulan Yue was different. The little girl admired Ouyang Shuo very much. Moreover, her ambition wasn't here. That was why Ouyang Shuo was so at ease with her. Raising Mulan Yue's status was also to pave the way for her in the future. Of course, Mulan Yue's ability was also recognized by Ouyang Shuo. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used the county as an experimental field to nurture the little girl. Compared to Pei Ju and the other famous officials, Mulan Yue was naturally inferior. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo specially mentioned in the official letter to Xiao He that the officials assigned to Zhenan County must be those with rich experience. Ouyang Shuo could be said to have given a lot of thought to Mulan Yue. The only problem was that once Mulan Yue went to Jinan County, she wouldn't be able to use the teleportation array in Mulan City. She would have to go to Shanghai City to play with Ouyang Shuo. Ouyang Shuo wanted to help, but he couldn't. Forget it. How could she grow up without experiencing wind and rain? When a young eagle grew up, it would have to soar in the sky by itself. As his hegemony grew, Ouyang Shuo's mentality also became more and more seasoned. According to Song Jia, he was clearly a young man in his early 20s, but he already had the demeanor of a middle-aged uncle. Ouyang Shuo already had the self-awareness of being a senior to Mulan Yue. The two of them were clearly only a few years apart. It had to be said that Ouyang Shuo was really old. Moreover, in this past year, Ouyang Shuo didn't stay in Shanghai City for long. He basically spent most of his time outside. Thinking about it carefully, he really had a hard life. In addition, Ouyang Shuo also transferred the magistrate of Yunnan Prefecture, Cui Shaoxi, who had a promising future, to Jinan County to take up the post of Jinan County's administrative chief to assist Mulan Yue in handling government affairs. Of course, according to the administrative structure of Shanghai City, the administrative chief of the county was actually half a rank higher than the magistrate. When mentioning Cui Shaoxi, one had to mention the Cui clan. According to the letter Song Jia sent him, the entire Cui clan had officially moved to Shanghai City a week ago. As for Bai Clan Trading Company, they still hadn't given Song Jia a definite answer. Who knew what Bai Gue, this old fox, was selling in his gourd? The Black Snake Guard's search for Fan Li had a clue. According to the letter from the Black Snake, it would take at most a week to locate Fan Li and Shi Shi. Ouyang Shuo reckoned that Bai Gue wouldn't be waiting for Fan Li, right? These merchants had too many twists and turns in their minds. They were not straightforward at all. After Ouyang Shuo decided on the 3 candidates for the county governor, the trouble had only just begun for Shaohe. The county governor had been chosen, but it was a huge problem to appoint all the officials from the various regions. In less than 4 months, Shanghai City had occupied Zhaoqing County, Wuzhou County, Xuanzhou County, Jin County, and Guilin County. Compared to 4 months ago, the area of the territory had expanded by nearly 2 times. It was extremely inappropriate to expand on a large scale in such a short period of time. It would inevitably lead to a lack of stamina, causing the accumulated foundation of the territory to be greatly weakened. The core problem was the shortage of talents. Lianzhou County was the county with the deepest foundation. Although Cheongzhou County was desolate in the beginning, its foundation grew stronger day by day under the support of Cliff Mountain City's territorial characteristics. Liizhou County, which was previously occupied, was still fine because it was ruled by overlord players. Even Zhaoqing County had a certain amount of foundation. After occupying it, with the support of the new territorial characteristics, it could quickly keep up with Lianzhou County's pace. However, Ouyang Shuo didn't dare to compliment the newly occupied 4 counties of South Sichuan Province. Needless to say, Wuzhou County was simply a mess under Qiu's brutal governance. Ouyang Shuo had no choice but to send an important official, Fan Zhongyan, to personally govern the county. Under Hong Xiuquan's rule, Xuanzhou County, Jin County, and Guilin County were wholeheartedly focused on external expansion. The internal affairs of the territory were also a mess. If not for Su Zhe and the others managing it, it would probably be even worse. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had been wreaking havoc in the 3 counties for nearly a year, and all their foundation had been destroyed. The essence of the entire 3 counties had probably been gathered by Hong Xiuquan to support Tianjin City. Therefore, it could be said that there was a long way to go to govern these 3 counties. If the 3 counties were to all follow the bureaucratic system of Shanghai City, the number of officials needed would be extremely shocking. In addition, during this period of time, the administrative office had followed Ouyang Shuo's instructions and conducted a comprehensive inspection of the officials in the territory, eliminating hundreds of unqualified officials in one go. Therefore, even if the territory had a powerful machine like the Southwest University China Hall, it still couldn't keep up with the speed of the territory's expansion. According to Xiao He's preliminary calculations, the number of officials in the territory would reach an astonishing 1,500 people. With no other choice, Xiao He could only personally go to the capital cities and use the reputation of the Holy Land of the 100 Schools to recruit talented people with generous pay. Of course, Xiao He definitely didn't dare to go to Xianyang City. Moreover, it would be useless even if he went. Even so, Xiao He was only able to recruit some low-level officials. The real talents would do well in the capital and wouldn't easily take the bait. The huge number of officials made Xiao He unable to eat or sleep in peace. With no other choice, Xiao He could only discuss with Jiang Shang that the winter students of the Southwest University China Hall would have to undergo the graduation examination in advance. Those who passed the examination would immediately be assigned to various places. At the same time, Xiao He also earnestly asked the dean of the School of Classics, Meng Zi, to use the influence of the Confucian school to summon all the Confucian scholars to Shanghai City to become officials. Xiao He also made the same request to the other 100 schools of thought. With all these efforts, the number was barely 1,000. As for the remaining vacancies, they could only think about it at length. The vacancies would be temporarily filled by the local officials. Xiao He joked that he was making up the numbers. After all, the 1,500 official vacancies was calculated by Xiao He after considering the available officials in the 3 counties. Therefore, the person who temporarily replaced them was really someone who was useless. All of a sudden, the overall quality of the territory's bureaucracy dropped a whole level. Regarding this, whether it was Xiao He or Ouyang Shuo, there was nothing they could do. If it wasn't for the fact that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was really too big to resist, Ouyang Shuo originally didn't want to be so eager for quick success. Unfortunately, the situation was already like this, and Ouyang Shuo had to continue. Of course, everything had its pros and cons. Once Shanghai City completed this round of digestion, a brand new territory would stand tall in the Southwest land. At that time, the territory would rise from the ashes. A dynasty had already begun to take shape. Yes, it was a dynasty. According to the current size of the territory, other than the foundation, at least in terms of territory, there was not much difference between them and the dynasties in history. Of course, it was also because of the huge disparity in foundation that it was only the embryonic form of a dynasty. After dealing with the military and political affairs after the war, Ouyang Shuo prepared to pack his luggage and set off for Tianjin City. Although the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had surrendered, Ouyang Shuo had to go to Tianjin City to assume command. Furthermore, there were probably many matters in Tianjin City that required his personal decisions. For example, the disposal of the 100,000 Taiping soldiers, the settlement of the civil and military officials of the Heavenly State, the disposal of the property in the city, especially the Heavenly Emperor Palace, and so on. Yang Xiuqing was cautious and would not make any decisions on her own. On the 18th day of the 11th month, Ouyang Shuo led his troops and left Guiping Pass. Because Ouyang Shuo had already officially appointed him as the governor of Guilin County, Pei Ju naturally stayed behind when Ouyang Shuo left Guiping Pass with his troops. Pei Ju would meet up with the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xian at Guiping Pass and enter Guilin County together. At the same time, there were only 2 mountain barbarian independent divisions following Ouyang Shuo to Tianjin City. The remaining independent division was stationed at Guiping Pass and Xuanwu Pass. 5,000 mountain barbarians were stationed at Xuanwu Pass, while the rest were stationed at Guiping Pass. Only when Han Xian and his troops arrived and took over the defense of the 2 passes would the mountain barbarian independent division head south to meet up with Ouyang Shuo. The mighty army exited the pass and disappeared into the horizon. In the distance, there stood a huge city. It was Tianjin City. Ouyang Shuo would stay there for a period of time to draw up and implement his grand blueprint. It could be said that the surrender of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was an important juncture of Ouyang Shuo's hegemony. Because of this, he could be considered to have officially stepped onto the path of a mighty lord, establishing his position in the wilderness. At this stage, ordinary setbacks were no longer able to topple Ouyang Shua's rule. This was the foundation. And just as Ouyang Shua was planning out his territory blueprint, a sudden upheaval immediately made his plan come to nothing. It gave him a heavy blow when he was at the peak of his ambitions. Gaia Year 2, November 19th, at the northern border of Gillen County. The morning sun shone on the vast wilderness at the border, peaceful and warm. At this time, a huge army suddenly appeared in the wilderness. As far as the eye could see, there were flags fluttering in the wind, swords and spears standing in great numbers. There was no end in sight. The endless army, like a ghost, suddenly charged into Gillen County. On the day after Ouyang Shua led his troops away from Guiping Pass, more than 10 lords from the south of the northern Sichuan province joined forces with a 100,000 coalition army of the southern Xiang city-state. Taking advantage of the emptiness of Gillen County, they brazenly launched an invasion. The two armies totaled more than 200,000. With lightning speed, they forcefully charged into Gillen County. To be continued. Chapter 530. The 200,000-strong Allied army instantly started a monstrous massacre in Gillen County. Strictly speaking, the garrison of Gillen County still existed and had not been transferred to Tianjin City by Hong Xiuquan. After all, Gillen County was Hong Xiuquan's backup plan. He would not destroy his own future. In addition to the garrison, there was also a field army of more than 20,000 people stationed in Gillen County. Following Yang Xiuqing's control of Kingdom of Heaven, Gillen County instantly became a mess. This was because the field army stationed in Gillen County could be said to be Hong Xiuquan's trusted subordinates. Seeing that the Heavenly King had passed away, his successor, Yang Xiuqing, had actually immediately surrendered to Shanghai City. The enraged army was naturally unwilling. However, they did not have the guts to attack Tianjin City. The soldiers had nowhere to vent their anger, so they could only vent it on the people in the county. On the other hand, the attitude of the local garrison troops of Gillen County was much more ambiguous. Their loyalty to the Heavenly King had not reached the point of risking their lives to avenge him. In addition, most of the soldiers in the local garrison were from Gillen County, and they were responsible for defending their territory. Naturally, they would not tolerate the field army acting recklessly in the county. The two military forces were quietly competing in Gillen County. This was precisely the reason why Ouyang Shua arranged for the Mountain Barbarian Independent Regiment to be stationed at Guiping Pass and Xianwu Pass. It was precisely to prevent this disturbance from spreading to Xuanzhou County. Originally, Ouyang Shua could lead his troops to quell the unrest in Gillen County. Unfortunately, the situation in Tianjin City was still unstable, and Ouyang Shua was urgently needed to oversee it. After weighing the pros and cons, Ouyang Shua decided to put Gillen County aside for the time being. Once Han Xian arrived with his troops, all the problems would naturally be solved. Apart from that, Ouyang Shua had another sinister motive. He wanted to take advantage of the chaos in Gillen County to let the irrational field army destroy the hearts of the people gathered by the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. As the saying goes, the hearts of the people are against him. Ouyang Shua did not want the people under his rule to have any nostalgia for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Wasn't the chaos of the field army digging their own graves? As for the civilian casualties caused by this, it was not within Ouyang Shua's consideration. As a king, how could he be soft-hearted all the time? Ouyang Shua might even be extremely pleased with himself for this plan of his. Who would have thought that such an inconspicuous oversight would allow the cunning enemy to seize the opportunity? The chaotic Gillen County was no match for the 200,000-strong army. In addition, there seemed to be an expert guiding the enemy and a great general leading them. Naturally, they were invincible and victorious. In just 3 days, more than half of Gillen County had fallen. At this moment, the commander of the Allied forces unexpectedly split the army into 3. The 60,000-strong army stayed in Gillen County to continue their unfinished mission. The 80,000-strong army marched straight south, heading straight for Guiping Pass. The remaining 60,000 soldiers went to attack another pass, Xuanwu Pass. It was this act of splitting up the troops that completely established the coalition army's chances of victory. If the Allied forces were to cross the pass, break into Xuanzhou County, and engage in a fierce battle of life and death with the army of Shanghai City, the Allied forces naturally did not have the confidence or strength to do so. However, it was necessary for them to occupy these two passes and completely block off the path that Shanghai City's army could take to the north. Otherwise, the newly conquered Guilin County would have to face the constant threat of Shanghai City's army. Just thinking about it made people feel uncomfortable. Therefore, only by occupying the pass could their battle plan be considered to have achieved complete success. Precisely because of this, everything had to be done quickly. The Allied forces had to complete the occupation of the two passes before the army of Shanghai City returned to reinforce them. Otherwise, there was no need to mention anything else. Thus, both the Allied forces and the army of Shanghai City were in a race against time. 2 days ago, on the 20th of November, Gui Ping Pass. More than 8,000 elite barbarian soldiers were stationed in Gui Ping Pass, and the one in charge of leading this barbarian army was the young general that Ouyang Shua thought highly of, Shi. On the second day after the Allied forces invaded Guilin County, a secret letter from a military intelligence department was sent to Gui Ping Pass. Whether it was the military intelligence department or the Black Snake Guard, the infiltration of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was mainly concentrated in Xuanzhou County, with Tianjing City as the core. Because of the limited manpower and energy, their infiltration of Guilin County and Zhun County was somewhat insufficient. Even so, it was already not easy for the military intelligence department to obtain accurate information on the second day. Shi was shocked when he received the news. The sudden attack of an elite army of 200,000 had come without any warning. The sudden heavy pressure pressed down on this young general to the point that he was almost unable to breathe. Strictly speaking, this was the first time Shi was leading an army alone, and he had to face such a test of life and death. For a young general, this was indeed too cruel. Without experiencing it personally, outsiders would not be able to understand this kind of pressure. Some of the generals in the army even instantly collapsed under the heavy pressure. On their shoulders were the lives of thousands of people. The slightest mistake would probably cause them to fall into a bottomless abyss. Fortunately, there was still a capable person in Gui Ping Pass at this time. He was Pei Ju. At the crucial moment, Pei Ju stood up and became the temporary military advisor of the garrison. During the attack on Xuanzhou County, Ouyang Shua had always kept Pei Ju by his side and often asked him for advice. Thus, Shi trusted his old subject, Pei Ju, greatly. It was Pei Ju's consolation that allowed Shi to quickly calm down and think of a countermeasure. Compared to the young Shi, Pei Ju's insight was very shrewd. He immediately concluded that the enemy's move to Guilin County was unusual. As long as the enemy was not stupid, they would eventually attack Gui Ping Pass. Thus, Pei Ju immediately arranged for several messengers to ride on fast horses to inform the Marquis army that was already on the way. At the same time, he ordered for Gui Ping Pass's defense facilities to be improved. Gui Ping Pass was the same as Southern Town Pass, a fortress built in the wilderness. The basic defense facilities inside the pass were quite complete. After Hong Xiuquan took over Xuanzhou County, he had also arranged for craftsmen to repair the pass. The resources inside the pass were also considered sufficient. The only regret was that Hong Xiuquan's treasure, the cannons, were not placed at the pass. Thus, Pei Ju's so-called repair was only to repair the damage caused by the mountain barbarians' attack on Gui Ping Pass. At the same time, a large number of defensive resources were moved to the city walls. November 21st, noon. Strong sunlight shone through the red clouds and roasted the wilderness. On the distant horizon, a cavalryman in light armor suddenly appeared. On the side of the cavalryman, there was an empty war horse galloping along the way, stirring up clouds of dust. At this moment, a hint of joy appeared in the cavalryman's eyes. In front of him, There was an army of tens of thousands of people marching forward. Marquee, urgent military news. As the cavalryman galloped, he constantly waved the flag on his back and shouted loudly, "Marquee, urgent military news." On this ordinary afternoon, the messenger's page sent only used a day and a half to catch up to the main force led by Ouyang Shaw. Because of this, a total of 3 excellent warhorses were exhausted to death along the way. Even the messengers fainted after completing the task. While marching, Ouyang Shaw could not receive secret letters. Thus, he was late by a full 2.5 days before receiving the news that the Allied army was attacking Guilin County. At this time, Ouyang Shaw was less than 2 days away from Tianjin City. According to the time, the Leopard Tau Corps led by Han Xian was at least 3 days away from Guiping Pass. On the way, they could not be contacted, so they could not be counted on for the time being. Hearing the news, Ouyang Shaw's heart trembled, and then he flew into a rage. "Little thief, you actually dare to mess with the Tai Sui." Ouyang Shaw did not expect the lords of North Sichuan province to collude with Xiangnan City so quickly. What was more hateful was that they dared to take the initiative to provoke Shanghai City. On second thought, Ouyang Shaw could only smile bitterly. He had to admit that the enemy's timing was really ingenious. At this time, Shanghai City seemed to be at the peak of hegemony, but it was also at its weakest. It had an extremely vast territory, but it did not have a matching army. Only after completing the reorganization of hundreds of thousands of Taiping soldiers could Shanghai City be considered really powerful. However, the enemy seized this opportunity. It seemed that the enemy was sure that Shanghai City did not dare to start a large-scale war with them at this time. "I'm afraid there is an expert behind the Allied army." Ouyang Shaw gradually calmed down and pondered. What he did not know was that when the Allied army broke into Guilin County, the 100,000 Allied army of Lingnan City frequently stirred up trouble at the border. Obviously, they were cooperating with Xiangnan City to be responsible for restraining the Lingnan war zone. There was no doubt that this was a well-planned plot. After Shanghai City destroyed the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, the fear of Shanghai City's lords players toward Shanghai City reached an all-time high. This time, a total of 3 provinces had joined forces for the sake of curbing the rise of Shanghai City. Ouyang Shaw got rid of his thoughts and immediately ordered the army to turn around and go straight to Guiping Pass. The Allied army knew the importance of the pass. How could Ouyang Shaw not know? That was why he didn't even think about it, and led his troops back without any regard for the consequences. He hoped that Guiping Pass could hold. Unfortunately, the 2 mountain barbarian independent divisions, led by Ouyang Shaw, were out-and-out infantry. Even if they rushed all the way, it would take at least 2 days to rush back to Guiping Pass. By then, it would be too late. Fortunately, Ouyang Shaw still had a cavalry, which was the 3,000 Divine Martial Guards. Ouyang Shaw immediately decided to personally lead the Divine Martial Guards and set off first. As for the Mountain Barbarian Independent Division, they followed behind and advanced toward Guiping Pass at the fastest speed. Everything was really a race against time. To be continued. Chapter 531, November 22nd, early morning, Guiping Pass. With the help of the morning light and the dew, the 80,000-strong coalition army marched on the undulating mountain road. In front of Guiping Pass, there was a long and narrow mountain road, twisting and turning. The 80,000-strong army was lined up in a straight line, stretching for dozens of miles, with no end in sight. It was so dense that it made people panic. The army marching forward was like a huge black dragon, winding in the mountains and rivers. At first glance, there was a strange sense of beauty. Who would have thought that this was a group of tigers and wolves that would choose their prey, a group of determined, cold-blooded killers? At the front of the army was a phalanx of sword and shield soldiers. They would be the main force to attack the pass. Behind them were rows of archers and crossbowmen. Because the mountain road was rugged, the coalition army could not carry large siege weapons. They only carried simple ladders. Occasionally, there were a few heavy giant battering rams. At the end of the army, there were more than 10,000 elite cavalry. In the middle of the cavalry phalanx, there was a middle-aged general who was particularly eye-catching. He had sword-like eyebrows, bright eyes, and a determined expression. He wore a red robe, silver armor, and a gold-plated helmet. This middle-aged general was the commander of the coalition army in charge of attacking Guiping Pass. He was also the general of the 200,000-strong coalition army, Li Mu. Li Mu, a famous general of Zhao during the Warring States period, was one of the 4 famous generals of the Warring States period. During the Battle of Chongping, Li Mu was only a good general at the northern border of Zhao. It was not until the end of the Warring States period that Li Mu shone. Li Mu first fought against the Xiongnu at the northern border of Zhao. Then he mainly fought against Qin. Because of the Battle of Yin, he heavily injured the Qin army and received the title of Lord of Martial Peace. In 229 BC, King Qian of Zhao fell into the trap of Qin. He listened to slander and seized Li Mu's military power. Not long after, he killed Li Mu, and the designer of the trap was Wang Jian, one of the 4 famous generals. Needless to say, Li Mu was a famous general who could not be underestimated. With the appearance of Li Mu, the 4 famous generals of the Warring States period finally appeared in the wilderness. Bai Qi served Shanghai City, Wang Jian was under Emperor Qin, and Lian Pu was under Di Chun. As for Li Mu's lord, it was still a mystery. He only knew that it was one of the lords of the Allied forces. With such a great general in the coalition army, it was no wonder that they were able to capture more than half of Guilin County in just 3 days without encountering any decent obstacles. One had to know that even if they wanted to gallop across the entire Guilin County, it would take at least 3 to 4 days. This was because Guilin County was long and narrow from east to west and narrow from north to south. Li Mu gazed at the fortress in the distance, deep in thought. The scene in front of him was obviously beyond his expectation. For one thing, Li Mu did not expect that a large number of troops were stationed in the pass. Logically speaking, since the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had surrendered, neither the Taiping army nor the Shanghai army had any reason to stop at the pass. If they really had an army, why didn't they enter Guilin County? Everything was a mystery. After all, only a few people knew of Ouyang Shua's good intentions. Secondly, Li Mu did not expect that the enemy seemed to have already known of their existence. The intelligence system of Shanghai City was truly impressive. Therefore, Li Mu also thought of another point. Since the garrison of the fortress has received the news, the garrison of Shanghai City in Xuanzhou County must have also received the news, right? Maybe the reinforcements of Shanghai City are already on their way. From this, it could be inferred that the capture of Guiping Pass was urgent. Because once the reinforcements of Shanghai City arrived, Li Mu really did not have the confidence to capture Guiping Pass in one fell swoop. It seems that the military counselor's plan has been changed. Li Mu muttered to himself, but the look in his eyes became more and more determined. No change could stop the Allied forces from achieving their strategic goal. Guiping Pass must be taken. Although Li Mu was best at cavalry warfare, he was also good at attacking cities and seizing strongholds. When 2 enemies met on a narrow road, only the brave would win. Inside the fortress on the city wall, when the fierce 80,000 Allied troops appeared on the mountain road in front of Guiping Pass, they would be faced with an iron-blooded army that was ready to defend the pass with their lives. At this moment, the blood of the mountain barbarians suddenly boiled. In this battle, they would fight for the new barbarian king to prove their loyalty and bravery. All the failures and humiliations would be washed away with the blood of the enemy. Military exploits were always the greatest glory of a soldier. Pei Ju, the old minister, stood in the center of the city wall, watching the army in the distance with a grave expression. The number of the enemy was somewhat beyond his expectations. How long could an army 10 times their size hold out? In addition to Guiping Pass, there was another pass that Pei Ju was worried about, Xuanwu Pass. But there was nothing he could do to help Xuanwu Pass. In fact, the 2 passes were not next to each other. There were hundreds of miles between them. Therefore, What Peiju could do was to try his best to protect Guiping Pass, the main pass. Peiju did not completely give up on Xuanwu Pass. He did not transfer the 5,000 mountain barbarian soldiers stationed in Xuanwu Pass. After all, if there was not a single soldier station in Xuanwu Pass, the enemy could easily take Xuanwu Pass. They could even take a detour to Xuanzhou County and catch Guiping Pass unprepared. Therefore, whether it was Guiping Pass or Xuanwu Pass, they could not be easily lost. These two passes could be said to be the two important gates to the north of the Mountain Sea territory. Once the gates were opened, it would be a sign of great decline. Woo! Accompanied by the low sound of a bugle horn, the great battle suddenly began without any warning. The two sides did not provoke each other, nor did they criticize or curse each other. Ever since the battle began, the two armies had entered the fiercest and most tragic battle of offense and defense. Peiju's confidence in defending Guiping Pass was first because of the strength of the mountain barbarian soldiers, and second because the pass was narrow, which was not conducive for the Allied army to launch a large-scale attack. Therefore, although the Allied army had a vast army, the number of soldiers that could be invested in a unit of time was limited. As the saying went, one man can hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. Impregnable passes were not just words. What was about to be tested now was the will and battle power of the 8,000 mountain barbarians. They had to endure under the continuous attacks of the enemy. They could not be discouraged in the slightest. Once the mountain barbarians showed signs of fatigue, a gap would appear in the defensive line, giving the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. Muffled shouts echoed in the quiet mountain ridges. Every moment, there were people dying on the battlefield. Batches of the Allied army were sent to the front line by Li Mu, and they fell one after another. The strength of the mountain barbarian soldiers made all the Allied soldiers look askance. The defense line formed by the 8,000 mountain barbarians, braving the continuous rain of arrows from the Allied army, efficiently and orderly harvesting the lives of the Allied soldiers like the god of death. The soldiers looked grim, and their eyes were fanatical. Hu, the commander of the mountain barbarians, took the lead and killed the enemy the most bravely. This group of mountain barbarians seemed to be born for war. No enemy would make them retreat. For a whole morning, the Allied army launched 5 waves of fierce attacks, but they were all defeated. At the foot of the city wall of Guiping Pass, there was already a 1-meter-high pile of white bones. Similarly, under the baptism of the rain of arrows, the mountain barbarian soldiers on the city wall also suffered heavy losses. The mountain barbarians were strong, but they were too brave and did not know how to be flexible. When killing the enemy, they did not know how to protect themselves at all and were killed one by the rain of arrows. More than 1,000 mountain barbarian soldiers slept forever in Guiping Pass. Seeing that it was already noon, Li Mu did not want to give the mountain barbarians any chance to breathe at all. The well-rested army replaced the battered remnants of the army, continuously launching a fierce attack on Guiping Pass. The speed at which the troops changed from the front to the back was amazing. The mountain barbarian soldiers on the city wall only had time to drink water and swallow a cold steam bun, and the densely packed enemy troops once again rushed to the top of the city wall through ladders. Brothers kill. Hu swallowed the last mouthful of steamed bun, drew his tang knife in advance, turned around, and waved, cutting off the head of an Allied soldier, and a long line of blood splashed in the air. The blood splashed on the steamed bun in the hands of the mountain barbarian soldiers, but the soldiers did not care at all. They did not even wipe it off and directly swallowed it with blood. How could the bloody deeds of the Qiyu era be easily erased? Seeing this, the Allied soldiers were all shocked. The enemy in front of them was not so much human, but a group of evil spirits from hell. They were afraid before the battle began. However, the bugle call to attack was endless. The Allied soldiers could only grit their teeth and fight with this group of evil spirits. This battle caused even the heavens and the earth to change color. The red clouds above Guiping Pass formed a huge vortex, slowly rotating. Endless blood chi and murderous intent converged into the blood-colored vortex, which was very frightening. This battle was not only a race of time, but also a competition of the will of the two sides. In the face of endless attacks, the mountain barbarian soldiers were like immortal gods of war. Their bodies were filled with a steady source of power, and they did not show any signs of fatigue. Seeing that the sunset had already risen in the distant sky, Li Mu's expression also became more and more solemn. The tenacity of the enemy was beyond his expectation. Because of this, Li Mu even thought of his old opponent, the powerful soldiers of the Great Qin. At that time, the Qin army was also so brave and fierce. I didn't expect that there would be such an iron-blooded army in the wilderness. Li Mu sighed and ordered the troops to retreat, ready to fight again tomorrow. After a day of attack, although the Allied forces suffered heavy losses, more than 25,000 people, according to Li Mu's estimation, more than half of the garrison troops in the stronghold had been killed or injured. The remaining 4,000 soldiers would face the strong attack of the Allied forces tomorrow. If everything went well, they would be able to take Guiping Pass by noon tomorrow. Li Mu's will had never been so firm. The military counselor was right. Shanghai City was a giant dragon that was about to take off. They had to give this dragon a fatal blow before it took off. Otherwise, there would be no space for other territories in the southwest to survive in the future. Even if you're a dragon, you'll still have to coil up. To be continued. Chapter 532. When a morning sun once again shone on the top of Guiping Pass. Yesterday's battle was staged again. The two armies, which had rested for a night, once again threw themselves into this fierce battle of life and death without hesitation. Obviously, the Allied forces felt that today's advance was much smoother than yesterday's. The 4,000 barbarian soldiers looked at the seemingly endless army, and for the first time, hesitation appeared in their eyes. With just them, they could not even occupy the walls of Guiping Pass, leaving gaps. From time to time, the Allied soldiers would take advantage of the gaps and climb up the walls fearlessly. Sure, who had to personally lead a firefighting team to go between the walls and extinguish all dangers. Even so, they were in danger again and again, with heavy casualties. It seemed that the battle situation could no longer be maintained. The huge difference in the number of troops between the two sides directly caused a qualitative change from quantitative change. The balance of the war was completely tilted towards the Allied forces. Even the powerful mountain barbarian soldiers were unable to split themselves into two, unable to face such a vast army. Coupled with Li Mu's brilliant command, the Allied forces advanced and retreated in a well-coordinated manner. The saber and shield soldiers and archers cooperated well, and the fire cover and close combat attacks were smoothly linked. Even when facing the remnants of the army, Li Mu went all out without any carelessness. And this was one of the qualities that distinguished a famous general from an ordinary general. For a moment, Guiping Pass was on the verge of collapse. Pei Ju stood on the city gate tower with a solemn expression. Suddenly, a trace of pain flashed across his face. He got up and came to Shihu's side, saying bitterly, "General Shi, prepare to retreat." What? The young general was already covered in blood, but even so, he could not hide his shocked expression. "I said retreat." Pei Ju understood the mood of a general like Shi at this moment, but he still had to make the most rational decision. He said painfully, "Guiping Pass can no longer be defended. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Just take it as leaving some roots for the first independent army of the barbarians. Don't let its name disappear completely." Shi, who was speechless, he turned his head to look at the men who were still fighting with all their might, and a trace of pain flashed across his eyes. After this battle, the elite army that the Marquis had the highest expectations for would really cease to exist. No, unexpectedly, Shi shook his head once again. A rare smile actually appeared on his blood-stained face. He faintly said, "Sir Pei, you are an important minister that the Marquis thinks highly of. You are different from us uncouth fellows. You should not die here. How about this? I'll immediately arrange for a group of guards to escort you out. What about you? Peiju looked at Sure, who felt increasingly uneasy. Hearing this, the young general suddenly grinned. Under the illumination of the sun, this smile was so pure and calm, filled with a beauty that one could not look at directly. At this moment, Sure Hu's heart seemed to have been elevated once again. Sir, we are different. Sure Hu turned around, looking towards the distant horizon. In that direction, under the blood-colored sky, there seemed to be a type of mysterious power guiding this young mountain barbarian officer, allowing him to obtain a type of mysterious comfort. We are warriors, barbarian mountain warriors, the most loyal guards of the barbarian king. Sure Hu's voice was low and calm, as if he had suddenly let go of all his burdens and only calmness remained in his heart. Barbarian mountain warriors can only die in battle. They cannot be deserters. Sure Hu tightened his grip on the blade in his hand, faintly smiling once again. This is our fate. Hearing this, a trace of emotion flashed through Peiju's eyes. At this moment, his impression of the mountain barbarians completely changed. Before, in Peiju's eyes, especially after being persecuted by Chi Yu, the mountain barbarians were a synonym for uncouth and arrogant. But at this moment, he deeply felt the outstanding qualities of this race. Tenacity, silence, bravery, not good with words, not afraid of sacrifice. All of these beautiful qualities were best expressed in them. This was a race that made people feel deep respect. They would not say words like kindness or loyalty all day, but at the most crucial moment, they would put them into practice. As the saying goes, it is easy to know but difficult to do. To be able to do this, just how rare and precious was the mountain barbarian race. Thinking about it now, it seemed that the Marquis did not subdue the mountain barbarian race on the spur of the moment. Most likely, the Marquis had long seen their rare and precious qualities. Thinking of this, Peiju sighed in his heart. He did not expect that with his old age, there would be prejudice in his eyes. Peiju glanced at the mountain barbarian officer on the other side, a trace of decisiveness flashing past his eyes. He gently said, "Since that is the case, then this old man's old bones might not be able to move anymore. I will stay here and accompany you all." "Sir, you must not." Sure Hu had been calm just now, suddenly became anxious and waved his hands repeatedly. "Why not?" Peiju had already made up his mind. "Sir, you are a civil official. Governing the territory is your strength. Why do you have to accompany us soldiers and sacrifice our lives in vain on the battlefield?" "No." Peiju shook his head and said with a smile, "General, you are wrong. This old man's current identity is the military advisor of the garrison at Guiping Pass. I am a proper soldier, not some civil official." But Peiju waved his hand and said, "There are no buts. It is decided. General, return to your post. Even if we die, we will make the enemy pay a heavy price. The glory of Shanghai City cannot be blasphemed." Sure Hu gave Peiju a deep look, a strange emotion flashing through his eyes. At this moment, the two people who had been estranged suddenly seemed to understand each other. In the end, the young general did not say anything. He solemnly saluted Peiju, turned, and left. Peiju stood where he was, leisurely gazing at the army outside the city, thinking about something. Peiju had not expected that there would be a day when his blood would boil and he would bravely die for justice. Scenes of the past flashed through his mind, and for a moment he was filled with emotion. Recalling the past, the extraordinary years, young at the prime of his youth, a scholar's spirit, full of vigor, conquering the Turks, passing through the western regions, lofty aspirations, wanting to be made a marquis, conquering Liaodong, suppressing the north. Once remembered, go to Jiangdu to strike the water, the waves stopping the flying boat. Passing through the Great Tang, ascending the stage to pay respects to the Prime Minister. How much misty rain had there been? The past events were all joked about. Accompanying Peiju's impassioned words, the remaining mountain barbarian soldiers launched their strongest attack. Kill! 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 The rhythm of the battlefield suddenly sped up, the sounds of killing shaking the heavens, spreading in all directions. A group of mountain barbarian soldiers with the will to die, singing the battle song of the mountain barbarian race, facing tens of times the number of enemies without any fear. One by one, they bravely sacrificed themselves, throwing themselves into the embrace of the god of death. They were using their actions to fulfill their silent promise to the barbarian king. The mountain barbarian soldiers were worthy of their name, did not disappoint the expectations of the barbarian king, did not disgrace the glory of the division. Life at this moment was so heavy. Almost every moment, there would be a mountain barbarian soldier falling. Sure who was in pain, had completely transformed into a blood-red tiger, rampaging on the battlefield. The fall of each brother made the blood red and the tiger's eyes become even thicker. Towards the end, the blood tiger completely displayed its might, letting out a heaven-shaking roar. Sure who loudly shouted, suddenly going berserk. His body immediately enlarged, becoming extremely powerful. For a moment, on the battlefield, there was no one who could match him. Perhaps it was because they were influenced by Sure who, and added with the influence and guidance of the atmosphere of the battlefield, the remaining mountain barbarian soldiers all roared, one by one completing their berserk transformation. In an instant, the power of slaughter gathered. The attack of the allied forces was suddenly interrupted, and the whole line of attack was stopped. His aura was truly terrifying. Every time the mountain barbarians went berserk, they could bring a surprise to the enemy. Only Li Mu, who was at the back of the army, showed a hint of a smile. He had heard a little about the berserk transformation of the mountain barbarians. He knew that although the enemy suddenly became stronger, it was actually just the last radiance of the setting sun. Once the Allied forces survived this wave, victory was in front of them. Therefore, Li Mu did not show any mercy. He ordered the army to press forward and resist the enemy's strongest blow. Li Mu looked up at the sun in the sky. There were still 2 hours before noon. In other words, he could complete the task of taking down Guiping Pass ahead of time. On the battlefield, it was still an organized army. Although a small group of elite soldiers could be fierce for a while, it would not last long. Because this was a war, not a contest between warriors. The sad song of Guiping Pass was still being sung. It seemed that even God was unwilling to let this awe-inspiring army really go to the end. The turning point suddenly came. Just when Stone Tiger's army was in a desperate situation and was about to die, on the mountain road to the north of Guiping Pass, a cloud of dust suddenly rolled up, and then came the rumbling sound of horse hooves. In the rolling dust, the dazzling golden dragon flag was shining in the sun. It's a marquee. The marquee has come to reinforce us. The lookout of Guiping Pass immediately discovered the army that suddenly appeared outside the pass. Pei Ju was shocked when he heard that. He quickly turned around and looked over, and a trace of excitement flashed in his eyes. At this time, the golden dragon flag was like a lighthouse, saving the huge ship of the mountain barbarians that was about to be drowned. It's really the army of the Marquis. Hearing the news, there was a burst of cheers on the top of the city wall of Guiping Pass. The cheers were louder and louder, which made Li Mu's heart tremble in the distance. A bad premonition arose spontaneously. Did the variable finally appear? Li Mu muttered to himself. Ouyang Shual looked up at Guiping Pass, which was getting bigger and bigger in his eyes. Looking at the Lord flag of Shanghai City that was still fluttering over the pass, he let out a long sigh of relief. He led the divine martial guards to travel day and night. In addition to taking care of the war horses, he even ate on the horse. Finally, at the last moment, they arrived at Guiping Pass. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.